Today is April 24th, 2018. It's 2 p.m. and the Board of Commissioners workshop agenda is called to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Hodges?
Here.
Commissioner Oakley?
Here.
Commissioner Douther?
Present.
Vice Mayor Weinstein?
Here.
Mayor Black?
Present. The floor is now open for public comment. Just remember to speak into the microphone clearly, state your name and address, and please be respectful. Great. The floor is now closed for public comment. The first topic for discussion is the pavement management update. Director Marcia Cano.
Yes, ma'am. Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here today with Steve Tart with CPWG. While he's getting set up, I'll just give you a real quick background. We, 5 years ago, contracted with Steve's firm to do a pavement analysis of our city in 2012, sorry. We updated it this year, and I think we came back with a pretty good result, not to steal all of Steve's thunder. There's several, if you look at your packet, there's several, and Steve will go over it, considerations that they take into account when they're doing this analysis of our roads. You can go ahead.
Okay. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
Great.
Good. Let me make sure I'm going the right way. So I didn't bring cookies to keep you awake since it's after lunch, but we'll try to fly through here as quickly as we can. So as we say, this is we did a reinspection here back at the end of last year and the first part of this year for the roadway network. And basically, real quick, we'll kind of go through what pavement management is, just give you an update on that, and then we'll go through the report of the results. So basically, pavement management, what is that? It's basically a program for you guys to set on how to best maintain your roads and how to best use your dollars potentially on what priorities to use. The pavement management system, what we use is what you guys have that we're used for you folks is Paver. You'll see later in the presentation that was developed by the Corps. But the idea is to have a system that we can go out and routinely repeat and help you keep track of how the pavement condition is either declining or increasing based on how your management of that is done. And then you can see here what the pavement management systems do. And basically, we do a inspection, then we do some computer work with some algorithms. We put it in a GIS database. And then later on, we have the opportunity to basically take your budget numbers and do some M&R, which is maintenance and revitalization planning. We can help you guys set a kind of a 5 to 10 year CIP plan on how to best preserve your streets and get the best bang for your buck. As I said before, this is the software. It was developed by the Corps back in the 70s, and it has a lot of features in terms of ability to take the information that you guys want to do, take budgets and adjust those budgets, whether you have 50,000 or 5 million, and it'll kind of lay out over that CIP what is the best implementation of a pavement management plan over that time frame or any specified time frame. Excuse me. Next, kind of inventory definition, and I'm not going to get too much in the weeds here, but the idea is we go out and do an inspection, and we basically we inspect 10% of the roadway, and that's based on the Paver algorithms and the ASTM standards, which is a national engineering standard that we use, that we follow. And it basically, as you can see, it kind of goes from a network to a branch to a section. And the idea there is we're driving and actually taking video of the streets, and then we break that down into smaller pieces that we put a rating on, add that into the computer. The software does its thing and gives a PCI rating, which is a rating of where the condition of the street is. Next, this is just in the software. When we go out and we're actually looking in the streets and doing our inspections, there's 20 different distresses. We won't get into those, just an idea that it's a very thorough program that really looks at the micro conditions of the pavement to help assess where they're at. Sample asphalt distresses. As you can see, kind of a one that's very popular here in Florida is the alligator cracking. You can see basically what it is. You can see the low, medium, and high conditions of what the alligator cracking looks like out in the field. So basically we have a description when we go out, then we do a severity level. So first we go, okay, this is alligator cracking. Then we look and decide if it's low, medium, and high. And then we use that to input into the computer software. And that uses that information to determine a PCI rating. This is kind of our inspection process, kind of streamlined. So as I said, we drive the section, we locate sample area, and then we go through these various steps to make sure that we're taking enough appropriate samples and the correct samples and the correct information that will actually go into the computer program. And as you can see, a sample area is the width of the sample area times 100 feet in length. So whatever the roadway width happens to be times 100, and the target inspection area is 10%. Based on that national ASTM standard. The PCI, pavement condition index, so that's a 0 to 100, and basically what we do is the computer goes through and we go through and determine on our sections that we rate them 0 to 100. And this is kind of the process and what it goes through to determine its PCI. So now that was kind of how it works. Now we'll talk about the results of your actual project. So our project scope for the reinspection was to do the inventory definition, to go back and re-update that, to do the standardized condition assessment, to go back and look at the current conditions. So we actually went out and drove the entire city and took video of that and then did our sections based on that. We did a GIS linking for the videos and the pictures to the actual sample location. Then we pulled together the specific tables of the ratings in the report, and then we gave a final condition report, which staff has. And that's a copy of that's the cover of the report that we gave the staff. Project results by the numbers. For you folks, you don't have any failed roads, which is great. And then based on that, you can see the number of section of lane miles were the varying conditions. So very poor, you don't have any. Poor is 2, fair is 7, good 16, very good 6, and excellent 15 miles. So you can see that you have 45 centerline miles. We collected 234 management sections and total 2.8 million square feet of area that we inspected. So you guys are actually in really good shape. This is based on, again, this is just a chart of the results there in the table, just to show you how well that you guys are doing in terms of nothing there in the failed or very poor. The poor section is very small, even considering the size. As you can see at the bottom right-hand corner, you guys have a composite index of 78 for a PCI, which is rated good, nearly very good. This is other cities here in Florida that this is their PCI ratings. So you can see you guys, so Claremont and Lake Mary are over in the Orlando area, and Longwood's over there, and City of St. Pete Beach is a 71, City of Tampa is a 71, so you guys can see that you're significantly ahead of some of your immediate neighbors in terms of how you've handled maintenance and revitalization of the roads, which is great. So 78 is very good. 80 is about the highest that we've seen throughout the state. So you guys are doing a great job in terms of how you're handling your M&R. This is just a map. It's a little blurry. We actually have a couple boards that we provide the staff with that you guys can have, and it just outlines the entire roadway network and then gives you the roadway condition by color, so it's a quick reference for you all, for yourselves or for any citizens that want to see it. This will just kind of give you an idea of what the road conditions look like. So for this street, this is what would be an excellent condition. A lot of that is obviously on your new paved roads. You can see how the PCI ranges. This one is a good condition road. You see there's some cracking, some things you can see in this that you didn't in the excellent condition. I guess that was 2 that I showed you. And then kind of the next step would be if the city decides, that staff decides is, so we've done all the data collection, have all that. The next thing would be is to look at potentially doing what we did 12 years ago, where we came back and we did the M&R reporting, the 5-year CIP plan that I talked about. And you take all that data and work together with the city budgets and any other data that you guys have available and help you develop the next round of 5-year maintenance and revitalization project plan. This is
Quick
just kind of,
question.
sorry?
Question for you.
Sure.
Does this also say, or does your study also say, well, road, ABC, whatever it is, you know, it's at this stage right now, and in 3 years or 5 years, it'll be at this stage? Does it analyze where it will go?
No, it doesn't go backwards in the software, but it can tell you if you did X, Y, or Z, what it would be like in the future. But in general, you lose about 2 PCI a year in Florida, based on current weather conditions.
And if I may jump on that comment, Commissioner, we do have a inventory of all the roadway network here in Madeira Beach and the current condition of that roadway. So what we're going to do is, as we go through the pavement schedule for our CIP planning process, those roadways that are poor or in fair condition, those will be priority roadways, and that will be defined based on the hard data and factual information that we do have. So with working with the consultants, we have an inventory of the condition of all the roadways in our community. So currently, right now, we know the deficiencies now, and then we could also plan for future improvements.
Do you have an estimate, I guess is the best way to put it, of what an average road, how long an average road in this area lasts? I mean, does it?
No, not really, because
not deteriorate?
it depends how it was constructed. Because I know that you guys did some concrete impervious pavement, so that will last a little longer than a typical asphalt roadway. And it depends what type of asphalt that you put down on the particular roadway in terms of how long it will last. So there's a lot of variation in that.
And one last question is, you know, when, if we get salt water on the roads, does that tear it down quicker than just regular rainwater, or?
It actually depends on the condition of the road. If there's a way for there to be intrusion, any water, regardless of salt water is more harsh than potable. That will have an effect on the roadway conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple slides left. This one here basically kind of gives the idea of what we're trying to portray is that there's many things you can do besides just mill and resurface prior to getting to that stage. So you take some of your newer roads, and maybe 3 years from now, you could do a micro surfacing or something else or some other application that will extend the life of the road 3, 4, 5, 6 years and push out to where you have to do a full depth reclamation. So the idea of this slide is just say is part of the M&R plan, the maintenance and revitalization plan, is to see if there are steps prior to a mill and fill that can be taken for the city to extend the life and get a little more bang for your buck, so to speak. This just kind of shows an example of a 5-year condition, and it shows you based on, and we just picked a city that we did, not in Florida, and it kind of shows the strategy of if you spend certain amounts of money or you don't do anything, how the condition index is impacted by the spending. This just shows how this is just part of the system of what you would get if you go to the M&R part of it. It would show out the different strategies and what roads and how they would look in the future based on the particular application or treatment that you did to the roadway. And that's it. Questions? Or I can go back to anything that I want to try to be quick for you.
I noticed that the Parsley Circle, you know, it's divided east and west. Like 5 years ago, whoever did the study, did y'all do the study 5 years ago?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did
Said
the
it was
original.
worst
Yeah, we
street
did the
in town at
original
that
setup.
point. And I found your report interesting that it's still the worst street in town.
Could be. I'm not,
It is.
Okay.
It's the one that has the poor rating.
gotcha.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, one of the things that we would like to do moving forward is definitely develop a pavement management program whereby we can allocate the appropriate fundings to address the roadways that we know that there's some deficiencies, as well as in conversations with the consultant and the public works director, layering our stormwater infrastructure over this particular map so we know exactly the condition of our stormwater infrastructure improvements that are going to be made, because we don't want to have a situation whereby we go and make roadway improvements and then a year or two down the road we're making stormwater improvements. So through a pavement management program, overlaying our stormwater infrastructure and managing the program in real time will allow for us to make sure that when we go into a roadway, we address all the issues there in one fell swoop. So this is something that staff is really excited about incorporating it in the capital improvements budget so we can be proactive. And when we go into do projects, it's just one disruption as opposed to inconveniencing our residents over a longer duration of time.
When you, when you did your study, and I might have just missed this, when you did your study in 2012, did you do it on the same width and 100 feet that you did it this last time?
We typically tried to do the same section location because we have it referenced with GPS. So yes, we were trying to do the same section. We don't always have the option to do that, but in general, we try to repeat.
And do you actually then have the pictures, okay, so that we could, I mean, I'm not that. my
Yeah,
street's
yeah,
so
on
terrible,
the
but-
sections that were the same section in 12 and this time,
Yeah.
yeah, we would have pictures of both.
Okay. I mean, I look at it every
Sure
day, I'm sure all of us think our streets are the worst, you know,
Right.
in the city, but, you know, that's kind of human nature. But yeah, I would just think that,
So yes, that's possible to do.
okay.
And what we will do, Madam Mayor and members of the board, we will post this information on our website that's readily available for our residents, and also put a blurb in the city manager's report so people can download and see exactly what the condition of their particular roadway, and obviously the ones that need some improvement will be discussed as part of the budget process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was a great report. And I'm so glad our roads are doing well. Any more discussion on that topic? All right, next we have the water taxi agreement update. Mr. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, members of the board, what we will allow for is our finance director to give us a brief overview of the memorandum and the terms and conditions in the agreement. And then we have Ms. Corey Hubbard here to address the board and provide some insight with respect to how the water taxi program is doing here in Madeira Beach.
Mayor and Commissioners, under the city manager's direction, I put together the memo and put together the agreement, the initial agreement that was put together June 14th, 2016, and then the extension of the agreement was done last year, June 27th. Well, it was discussed at the June 27th workshop and approved by the commission in July to award the extension and the $25,000 per year. So the $25,000 was placed in this year's budget. Last year at this time, there was some question about subsidizing this endeavor, and Ms. Hubbard came to address the commission last year and indicated how the water taxi showcased the city and bringing more visitors into the city. Also asked Ms. Hubbard how the status of this project or the water taxi was doing, and she indicated that the number of riders never really exceeded 300, but this year in February it grew to 592 and 719 for the month of March. And on the suggestion of the city manager, we contacted the Clearwater Ferry and talked to the manager there, and she indicated that and this is just for the commission's information, that the city subsidizes that ferry, and granted, there may be some different circumstances of that arrangement, but they do subsidize them by $10,000 per month. So this item is being brought to your attention because we are in the process of starting the FY 2019 budget, and would like the commission to review this and to analyze it. And if there's an intent or recommendation to extend this, This would be for the October 1st through September 30th, 2019 timeframe. Any questions?
Madam Mayor, and members of the board, if we can have Ms. Hubbard address the board concerning the operations of the water taxi.
I will start out by passing out copies of our ridership to date with, from our start. As you can see, it starts in December of 2016 and extends today. And you can compare month to date, which I'll go through in my comments. I hope you forgive me, but I'm going to review some things for some members of the board and for new staff and new members of the commission. I'm going to kind of review our history, give you an update on our operation, as well as shed some light on potentially mutually beneficial future. Of course, my name is Corey Hubbard. I'm a fourth-generation ferry boat operator. My father, Mark, is in the audience, and my grandfather, Captain Wilson Hubbard, was a colorful fisherman who moved his business to Johns Pass in 1978. Because the city was growing and because he knew that once the Bayway went up, nobody was going to turn left and go to Pass a Girl anymore. They were going to turn right and go north on the beaches, so he was smart to do that. That same man was always cooking up interesting ways to get people on his boats. At one point, he even trained a pair of dolphins to perform for himself and tourists. But he wasn't always only fun and games. He was very serious about waterborne transportation and waterborne vessels serving as transportation. Back in the 1950s, just after he got home from World War II, he served as a sort of ferry operator to Mullet Key, which is modern-day Fort DeSoto, actually before there were bridges. And if you look at the history of the Barrier Islands, if you ever see any aerial photos of our community, you'll notice there's no bridges. And we always saw back in the early 1800s that in lieu of bridges, there was waterborne transportation. Actually, the Jungle Prada fishing pier that currently exists today was a ferry terminal back then. So my father, many years ago in the early 90s, started running dolphin watching trips out of Johns Pass before dolphin watching was a popular concept. At each stage in my family's history, everyone has thought we were a little crazy with some of our ideas. My father descended from fishermen, but knew that people also liked to go cruising. In the early 2000s, my father also founded Tampa Bay Ferry, which was to run ferry boats from Egmont Key, or to Egmont Key from Fort DeSoto. And at the same time, he was working with local government to support the vision of ferry transportation and the way that it could move people north to south along our beaches and through our waterways. But again, it was a little bit of a crazy concept, and if you can believe it, it still kind of is a little bit of a crazy concept. Because we spend so much infrastructure money on roads and bridges, it seems silly to think about this. But as I'll discuss with you, our beaches are getting quite busy and the water is quite empty. So it was 15 years ago that we won the RFP to operate our ferry from Fort DeSoto to Egmont Key, and in exchange for being the sole provider of the route, we remit 11% of our income to Pinellas County. Once a month, we send reports detailing our deck log, our manifest, and any galley sales. And I haven't checked the most updated numbers, and Dad, maybe you can shed some light on this, but last year, about midway through the year when we were having some of our busiest months, we remitted $4,000 to Pinellas County in 1 month. So things are going very well with that ferry operation. But I have to make this clear to you that this doesn't happen overnight. As a culture, we always celebrate success, and we look at all the winners and the big sports players and everyone who's glorified in their material and professional success, but we fail to acknowledge the slow starts and the inevitable difficulties and failures that plague those who take risks. And I'm blessed to be a part of a family in a business that survived hurricanes, oil spills, recessions, financial crises, and yet has continued to operate. So today we want to bootstrap another idea along with you. 2 years ago, we were invited to compete for the opportunity to operate a ferry service here in the city. And with the knowledge that waterborne transportation is catching on in our communities from as far south as St. Pete Beach to as far north as Clearwater, we were excited for the opportunity. We invested over $300,000 in equipment, staff, and prepared to begin our service. A few months prior to launching, the Barrier Island Governments Council passed a resolution unanimously in support of waterborne transportation. And their reasoning was as follows. I'll go ahead and disperse a copy of this document as well. What follows behind the Big C resolution is the Big C from the Tampa Bay Beaches, or the resolution from the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber in support of waterborne transportation. But their reasoning for adopting this resolution was that the largest economic driver in Pinellas County are the tourists that travel from all over the world to experience the beaches and the waterways of our barrier islands, and that tailored transportation solutions are needed to maximize the time that tourists spend off the roads and on the water, and that waterborne transportation is tested, efficient, and viable transportation and a solution for coastal communities, and that the barrier islands of Pinellas County boast a marine highway system that is only partially utilized and therefore requires minimal infrastructure investment, as well as waterborne transportation creates jobs and is a proven source of economic stimulus. Back in 2003, the current executive director of the Pinellas County MPO authored a feasibility study on waterborne transportation, and inside the study, he states that waterborne transportation is feasible for Pinellas County given a minimum level of public investment to initiate and support the service. And it is expected that the initial investment occur for a 3-year period in order to evaluate the utility of the service, as well as that the private sector would assume a greater share of the cost after the initial investment is made. And if you compare it to other services in Florida, like Mr. Pierce discussed, Clearwater Ferry, as well as the water bus in Fort Lauderdale, they received a $2.1 million grant from the Ferry Boat Discretionary Fund to establish their service. And part of that money was used to buy 8 hybrid ferry boats, as well as to, they had county support to gain access to docks and pocket parks all over the county. And it's an exceptionally successful operation. If you've ever visited Fort Lauderdale, it's widely embraced by the business community, the hotels, as well as visitors and locals. Last year, we actually retained the man who founded the Fort Lauderdale bus as a consultant to advise us on our service and how best to structure it. His number one piece of advice was that you must have city buy-in in the cities in which you operate. If you don't have city support, you're dead. Pretty blunt, but after we've learned and investigated sort of the reasons for his comments, we've learned that it's not just financial support. Although that helps, he explained that it's a vitally important partnership with the city so that we work together to build a successful service with the city and for the city. And let me explain to you why. It's because we are attempting to build an alternative form of transportation. We're attempting to alert our community that they have alternatives to buses, taxis, shuttles, as well as sitting in traffic and looking for busy beach parking. We're attempting to, in partnership with you, communicate a long-term goal. That goal is to work in advance of traffic congestion. We want to talk to you about Clearwater because it's a perfect case study for our beach communities. As you know, as an example, the Clearwater you see today is not the Clearwater. It was always this way. As their density has grown, so has their traffic problems. And just the same, the Clearwater Ferry that you see today has not always been that way. Back when Clearwater looked a lot more like Madeira Beach, a crazy entrepreneur called Phil Henderson attempted to build a service with multiple ferry routes inside of the Clearwater area. He built his framework for what is today Clearwater Ferry, but at the time it had a transportainment sort of look to it. Right? It didn't look like a bus system, almost like it does today. In order to get sort of butts and seats, you have to make your operation seem fun, especially when it's brand new for a community. And that company was sold several times, but it's morphed into the successful alternative operation that it is today, thanks to hard work, determination, and a massive city subsidy. As Clearwater's grown, the city's had no choice but to look outside their roads and onto their waterways, and of course, they've chosen to fund it. My goal, my father's goal, our family's goal is to walk this historical path with you together in the form of a public-private partnership. We understand, and you understand, that operations like this take years to catch on. And we're here. Yes, we may be a little bit early, but we're willing to be patient, because what if we're not? We're going to get to that day where traffic is so built up and the tourists are already here, and we're going to be sat in traffic looking around exasperated, wondering why we're not moving, wishing we could. And wouldn't it be nice to be moving with the sea breeze and on a boat? Just submit that to you, because today our conversation is very important for so many reasons. This past month alone, I've met with the city manager and the mayor of St. Pete Beach and with Treasure Island, and we're both working hard with those cities to partner to build and develop plans that service their communities in unique ways, because every city is different. And it's our job to study the city and to determine what works best for the community. In the past 3 months, I've been damn near harassing the Commission of Holmes Beach on Anna Maria Island in order to establish a ferry route that connects Pinellas County with Manatee County. Currently, it takes 1 hour without traffic to drive down to Anna Maria Island, and it takes 35 minutes by ferry. Which you may ask, why are they hesitating in cutting that route in half? Because it's difficult, it's new, and it's hard to understand something that we're not accustomed to looking at as a transportation solution. So I'll keep you updated on that, because I'm sure you'd like to ride a boat down to Anna Maria Island. And actually, just curious, of the sitting board members as well as staff, who's actually had a chance to ride the Madeira Beach ferry? Awesome, great, good. So I ask you then, why do you think that we think that you should want a ferry service in your community? I submit to you, I wonder what percentage of visitors to Madeira Beach and residents in Madeira Beach visit Johns Pass? What percentage do you estimate go out to eat at the restaurants in our community that have dock access, like Slice, right across the water? Or what percentage of the residents and locals pay to go out on a boat? And what percentage of these folks decide when they come in town to be on or near the water? I would submit to you that there's a high percentage of the folks I've mentioned that would do all of those things during their stay in Madeira Beach. And since we began our operation, I'll get into some brass tacks of numbers here, which is fun, especially because it's far better than the last time I was before you. Since we began our operation, the Madeira Beach Water Taxi has carried more than 4,100 people on our regular route. That's our day-to-day service of the regular route that we do almost daily. That's only a couple hundred people shy of the population of the city of Madeira Beach. As well as for special events, we have carried 1,613 people. These are hallmark events like the Old Salts Fishing Tournament, as well as the Johns Pass Seafood Festival. We've carried folks to restaurants, bars, and attractions. And when I presented to this commission last July, our ridership was certainly lower than ideal, especially for our profit margins. But we asked you at the time to recognize that we were only in the third quarter of a brand new business venture, employing a new technology in sort of a brand new market. And most businesses, as you know, operate in the red for at least the first year. But today, that picture is very different. We continue to learn new things and work to adapt our route to demand. Recently, we slimmed down our route, rebranded in print and online materials to reflect a fresh enterprise, which we both internally and externally refer to as the Madeira Beach Water Taxi. We've worked hard to connect with hotels, restaurants locally, as well as offer guests discounts, guests of local restaurants, patrons of hotels, steep discounts to try out the boat. In March of this year, we extended our operation to 7 days per week. This is notable as when we filed originally to compete for the RFP, we suggested we would run about 3 days per week. That was because we understood that, our city isn't Clearwater. Our city is, and this is also going to be a brand new enterprise. So in order to not go bankrupt, we were going to start small and grow. And I'm happy to report that in less than 2 years, we're up to 7 days per week. And that's also to signal to our community that we're serious about regular transportation. We're serious about being here every day for you. We're serious about potentially allowing you to build us into your commute. We want to partner with hotels to establish parking structures on the mainland so that they don't take up beach parking, all of the employees of the hotels. Anyway, last February, so February of 2017, we carried 159 people in 1 month. This February, we carried 592 people. Last March, we carried, so the March is the busiest month of the year, we carried 268 people. Out of all the months in 2017, March was our busiest month at 268. And this March, we carried 719 people. And last April, we carried 186 people. This April, we're still 7 days away from the end of the month, and we've had a lot of bad weather this month, and we've carried 582 people despite all of that. So that's almost a triple in growth despite not completing the month and having a lot of bad weather, which we cancel altogether on days like that. So today we carry on a Monday what we used to carry on a Saturday or a Sunday. We celebrated then those small numbers, and we celebrate today the bigger ones. But what does this tell you? This tells you that your investment is paying off. I urge you to consider that we're not selling a product like we do on our typical dolphin watch. We're not asking people to get on a boat so we can showcase them, a dolphin or a specific attraction. Our attraction, what we're showcasing, is the city of Madeira Beach. That's our product, and we need your help in order to do that effectively. Let me tell you that you have every right, in my view, to be skeptical, and every logical reason to be. I've heard my father talk about ferry services and the idea of waterborne transportation for decades. And only in the past couple of years do I really, honestly tell you that it's really caught on even in my own mind. I've really been able to get inside his head and understand his vision, especially because I traveled all over the country and all over the world, both testing waterborne transportation operations, and I've traveled to conferences with ferry operators and learned what the challenges are that they face. I've ridden ferries in first world countries like Stockholm, Sweden, and Hong Kong, and even in Istanbul, Turkey. And then in those countries, you see Hong Kong, they have more money than God. In Sweden, more money than many countries in the, or states in the United States. But in Hong Kong, they still run a ferry across their bay, despite bridges still being there. In Vietnam and places like Bali, they have very, very little money. So very poor communities and very poor governments, and they run ferries in lieu of bridges. I've been in Seattle, New York, California, cities like Chicago, and even in the Keys, and ridden ferries. At least 35 states, including Florida, currently have passenger ferry services. And oddly enough, Florida carried the least amount out of all of the states. Systems in Alaska, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Texas each carried more than 5 million passengers. And in California, their ferries had over 10 million passengers in 2014. But I believe that Florida's numbers will be increasing, especially because many communities are catching on and adopting their own ferry services. But the untold story of these operations is that a lot of these operations fail because people get excited about the project, but they fail to realize the immense capital infrastructure and human resources necessary to run these operations. But I'm proud to say that we have a 15-year track record and legacy of a healthy ferry operation out of Fort DeSoto, staff with decades of experience and great name recognition from a 90-year investment in our community, as well as we have you on our side. As a commission, I feel it's within your power to have a legacy that led the way for alternative transportation. I say that, and I almost want to repeat it, that it's your legacy that's allowed us to have the conversations that we've had with other cities, both locally and down in Anna Maria. Madeira Beach has the capacity to lead the way for the South Beaches into the future. A majority of the mayors on the Big C support waterborne transportation as a feasible alternative for our community. But these mayors also have commissions to convince, as well as a large amount of residents. And your decision, both today and in the coming weeks, will echo in our community. When you have the chance to vote on whether or not to continue this partnership, the ripples of your decision will extend both to Treasure Island, St. Pete, to Gulfport, to the city of St. Petersburg, and even down to Anna Maria Island. Everywhere I go, and I do get around, I talk about this city's leadership. Madeira Beach is always the first thing I mention, and I talk about this project. And I know you all inherited this project with the exception of Commissioner Hodges, and I recognize that, and I applaud you for choosing to keep us around, because for that, I'm very thankful. You've provided your community with an opportunity to explore the city in an alternative way. And you're allowing folks from Treasure Island to leave their hotel room on foot, walk across the street, and get on a boat and go to Johns Pass. How cool is that? You're allowing folks from Madeira Beach, from the Reddingtons, from Medine Rocks, Clearwater, Seminole, and beyond to get on a boat, explore our waterways, and jump off for a bite to eat at the largest free waterfront attraction on the west coast of Florida. You're taking cars off the road, you're leading the way with innovative solutions, and you're embracing a technology that very well may be absolutely necessary in the coming years. So thank you so much for all you've done today and in the past, and I wonder if you have any questions for me.
Hey, Corey. I just wanted to let you know that I have not ridden it. I'm sorry I hadn't, but I recommend it to relatives when they come in from out of town, friends when they come in from out of town. And I'm going to have to try it because they're all doing it. Then they come back and say something to me, and I say, well, no, I haven't ridden on it yet. But really, the service was great. Everyone just loves taking the ride. If nothing else, just the ride on the water is worth it. And I think I told you last time I had some relatives come in, they stayed at the Marriott, and they talked about that for the longest time. They were so impressed with it. And I'm sure a lot of other people are impressed with it too. We have something very unique here in Madeira Beach, and that is one of those uniquenesses that I like. And I feel like as far as tourism, we need this. I really do. I firmly believe we need this in our city. And like you said, it takes the cars off the road. It eliminates a lot of the parking problems we have. And it gives the people a chance to go from one end of the city to the other end of the city and see as much as they can on a boat, which is wonderful. But I just want to thank you. The numbers are great. And, you know, I was looking at this the other day, and I see that when we first started, a couple of years ago, you only had 2 drop-offs. How many drop-offs do you have now, pickup and drop-offs?
On the route, we actually originally had 9 different stops,
You had 9?
and we've cut down to 6.
Okay, because I originally saw the 2. That's what I was trying to make the point. We started off with just 2 at the very beginning, and it has really changed a lot. And I just want to thank you. You've done a great job. Mark, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I think Madeira Beach is better for it, too.
I hope so.
I just want to say thank you for the update. It's very informative. We have more data than we had previously, and I'm glad you're doing so much better. But I do have a question as to, I can see where the ridership went up in February and March because you said you extended the days per 7 days a week. But, and this is a good thing, but do you know what caused the ridership to go up so much in February? Because it's at 592, whereas the past February it was 159.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm the only person employed full-time to market the product, so for lack of a better word, I'm going to applaud myself. But I've been on full-time since I presented to you last year, and since then, the majority of what I've done is look at the original product that both my brother and my father worked on, and try to streamline it. A lot of people originally, when the boat came out, were very confused by the route, confused by the map, confused by how to use it. A lot of us, unless you've traveled to bigger cities, don't know how to use subways or sort of that type of, bus system. Often we just drive everywhere. So it's difficult to understand. So what I did to try to improve the product was clarify. I looked at the map and looked at the numbers of the folks who were getting on at different stops and had to cut. Ended up cutting 3 of our stops due to low interest. And then I would clarify the maps and clarify our branding. And I redid the website not once but twice. In fact, I would love to. I see that there's no computer, but if you guys go home today, and I can also send this to you via email. I have screenshots of our website. There was conversations prior to today about sort of the branding that we do in partnership with the city. But when you load TampaBayFerry.com today, there's 3 options to click: the Egmont Key Ferry, the Shell Key Ferry, and the Madeira Beach Water Taxi. If you click into the Madeira Beach Water Taxi, the first photo you see is a panorama of Johns Pass with the city sign that says Madeira Beach. If you go to our Contact Us page, there's an aerial view, a panorama of Johns Pass. If you go to our About Us page, there's an aerial view of the pass. And if you go to any of our social media, we're constantly referencing the city. So basically, getting accustomed to social media, getting the website up to date, refreshing the branding materials, clarifying the map. And I think the biggest thing was going basically door to door to businesses that are in clusters around of our routes. Because without those businesses sort of knowing how to use the service or kind of being on board with it, pun intended, we were sort of dead in the water. So I went to, for example, the Bill Maher, and I said, listen, guys, how about if inside of each of your hotel key cards, when guests check in, they have a little insert that says buy one, get one free for the Tampa Bay Ferry, and it's located 2 blocks away from the hotel. So those are in the key cards at the Bill Maher. If you go to Surf Beach or the Treasure Island Beach Resort, directly across the street from Middle Grounds Grill where we pick up, their key cards also are buy one, get one free, and it says directly across the street. Inside the Middle Grounds Grill and in Slice, they receive cards that say 30 seconds away from the restaurant, just to try to make it foolproof that people, when they encounter as a patron or a guest of these businesses, they're being awarded this sort of opportunity to go out on the boat, which ends up being $10 per adult. Now, if you happen to be a Madeira Beach resident, as you do know, they've received 50% off of their ticket fare. And between me and you, if any of you want to ride, you can go for free. But so between those partnerships with local businesses, as well as improving our branding, and the fact that you can't miss the boat. Literally, when you're driving around town, you see it in the bay, right? And it's pretty transparent how well we're doing that day. You know, if there's nobody on board, it's a bad thing. And if the boat's full, which it often is, it's a good thing. So I think from being present in the city, clarifying our branding, and partnering with local businesses is what I would largely point to. Dad, did you have any other ideas?
We went from running every 3 hours down to every 2 hours. With reducing the route size gave us some more room, which was a huge complaint we had through all the surveying we'd done previous. So that was a big attribute. And then, of course, February we had incredible weather.
Yes. Does that?
Of course, Corey.
We're people here.
And growing numbers of visitors, absolutely. But
Snowing everywhere else in the country.
right.
In the States, that's why I came here.
Right. And like Commissioner Hodges said, you know, we have a faithful amount of locals who recommend this to any out-of-town guests, which if you have space in your home to entertain, you know they're frequent, right? So that's been a huge deal. I'm even on Facebook groups locally. Sort of the I Love St. Pete Facebook is really popular. And I talk about the family operation. I talk about the pictures and sort of how on this boat you can literally have your own personal boat party. You can bring a cooler on board. You can bring pets on board. You can even hoist a wheelchair on board. I mean, it's really kind of a ball of clay or a blank canvas for riders. So you can have sort of like a party bus type of thing going around Madeira Beach and seeing the community from the water, being able to bring everything on board. So that's really unique. And I'm just trying to communicate that to locals because, as you know, if you don't get your local support in the off season, you die. So don't want to do that.
Thank you. I've got some questions for you.
Great.
You said you gave Pinellas County $4,000 or something like that. Mm-hmm. What is that for Pinellas County?
So similar to our agreement, in year 3 of our agreement, beyond $100,000 of our gross income, we would remit 10% of our income beyond that number to the city of Madeira Beach. We do the same with Pinellas County. In exchange for being the sole provider of this ferry route from Fort DeSoto, that means whenever you cross into Fort DeSoto, there's no commercial boat operation that's permitted to pick people up from Fort DeSoto and ferry them or drive them or whatever you want to call it, float them to Egmont Key or Shell Key. In exchange for that, we remit 11% of our income to the county. So we send them thorough descriptions of, like I said, our manifests, deck logs, and our galley sails. And from our percentage of income, we remit that funding to the county. And in exchange, too, they monitor our behavior and make sure that we're in compliance. Just that Facebook post I mentioned to I Love St. Pete had some questionable suggestion of beer and pets being allowed on these, protected wildlife preserves, and we got scolded for it. So we definitely have a partnership with them because they're concerned about their community, and that's just, it's a good partnership.
You said that you have talked to St. Pete and Treasure Island in supporting you. Where are you getting with that?
Great question, and I love talking about this. So with Treasure Island, we currently pick up and drop off from Middle Grounds Grill. And you might know there's a dock very close by that belongs to the city that we do not pick up and drop off at. Our conversations with the city have been about access to that dock and their plans to change where the city hall is located, improve that coastal kind of area, as well as they're very interested in cutting down on the amount of beach parking that is taken up by beach hotels. So we're in discussions only at the beginning stages with the mayor and city manager about potentially partnering with Pinellas County to find a parking structure on the mainland in order for employees of the hotels to park there, and we would ferry them back and forth and probably at that point pick up and drop off from the city's dock in order to allow hoteliers, their employees, the Bilmar has a separate parking lot just for employee and customer parking, to cut down on that precious land and be able to develop it for other resources, as well as just to update them on how we're servicing their community and telling them about what we do and sharing our progress. In the city of St. Pete Beach, we are just about a few weeks away from setting a date for a workshop, a public workshop with the commission, with residents, a kind of a cross-section of the community, hoteliers, businesses, residents, and everyone to get in the same room to talk about basically what we did with you several years ago, 2 years ago, which is, hey, where in the city of St. Pete Beach would you like a ferry to pick up and drop off? What would make sense for your route, for your community? One of the commissioners his district is almost 100% residential, and their concern is busy pedestrian traffic in their community. Residents have complaints, as you might know. So this workshop would be to ascertain the business interests, the residents' interests, as well as what feasibly we could service. So right now, the city of St. Pete Beach only has about 3 places where boats pick up and drop off, which are very busy locations: Mary Pier, 8th Avenue, on 8th Avenue, Dolphin Landings. And actually, there's only 2, right?
And in the St. Petersburg Yacht Club there were Sea Hags, the very
Right.
north end.
So,
It's not conducive to waterborne transportation.
right. Dolphin Landings, Mary Pier, and the location at Sea Hags are extremely busy locations, and they're already kind of full of commercial operations. So for the city to say, yes, Dan Peretz down at Dolphin Landings, you need to let the Hubbards pick up and drop off at your dock, do you think he would be happy about that? I don't think so. So we are talking to the city about pocket parks, about potentially ways to service trade winds and Serrata down at 55th Avenue, basically just getting in the same room to develop a route. So those are the conversations. And like I said, I've been in the chambers in Holmes Beach, going on 3 times now, multiple nasty and some positive articles about our attempt to get a ferry down there. And I workshop our idea, a pilot program down there in June. So.
A little bit, second part to that question, because reading from the Big C, it's like the they're recommending the municipalities embrace and support. I'm just wondering if any of these other cities, St. Pete, Treasure Island, Reddington, any of them supporting you financially?
Great question. Not to date, because there's no sort of deals in place. We did just have a really exciting meeting with Mayor Kreisman in St. Petersburg. And as you know, Mayor Kreisman is being the #1 cheerleader about regional waterborne transportation with the Cross Bay Ferry. He's lobbied for federal money, state money, as well as monies from the county, both Hillsborough and Pinellas, to support the Cross Bay. And that ferry is going to connect to the pier downtown. What we talked to them about is our current operation, our municipal ferry, of course, here in Madeira Beach, as well as our plans to go down to St. Pete and our desire to connect with the Cross Bay from the pier, circling around the southern point of Pinellas County, stopping in Gulfport, and then in St. Pete Beach. So this would mean folks downtown, the house downtown St. Pete is growing so much that we would potentially pick up from the pier and drop off in St. Pete Beach. And in contrast to the smaller municipalities on the beach, the city of St. Petersburg is immense, very well funded and just large in all senses. And they have a strong mayor structure of their city. So he just basically looked at us and said, put together some plans for a couple municipal ferries and we'll put it in our budget. It was like, that was the conversation.
I like
Yeah, it was astounding, actually. So in contrast to sort of Anna Maria, we've had conversations like that. So that would be something, because our first and foremost goal is to service the beaches. But connecting with downtown St. Pete would, of course, be exciting, but would require immense public support because the vessels that we currently operate wouldn't really make that route so efficient. We would need a faster boat. We need an enclosed boat that's air-conditioned. And we do have plans to both build and to hopefully purchase boats of that nature, but it, of course, would require public investment. So actually, also, I should mention, and I wanted to talk to you guys about this too, but the City of St. Pete Beach is very interested in what we do, because if you go down to Paso Grill at 8th Avenue, they have Mary Pier, but just immediately north of it is the 9th Avenue Pier, 7th? 9th Avenue Pier, which is all a bunch of pilings. So if we were to be able to build a plan in cooperation with the City of St. Petersburg to suggest that we could, like Fort Lauderdale did, assume funds from the federal ferry boat discretionary fund in order to develop a ferry route and suggest to the City of St. Pete that, hey, St. Pete Beach, if we're able to build this route and get it approved by the city, we could potentially bring down federal funds to improve the dock space in your city. And if you look at any ferry operation anywhere, that's what they do. They come in and they say, okay, we need X, Y, Z in order to get the route in place. Then they go to the state or the federal level and they request funding, because we're obviously proving that we're taking cars off the road, we're connecting the city with the beaches with the mainland and not clogging the roads. So there's a lot of money in various different places that's accessible, both in the state and the federal level, to bring money to local municipalities to allow for ferry transportation. So kind of that's a lot, but of course St. Pete Beach is very interested in that, because if it means that they can bring funds to their city by embracing this, why wouldn't they? As well as it provides a service.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very informative. Thank you.
Of course. And between now and when the next commission meeting is, or whenever I'm scheduled to sort of the gavel drops, if you will, I'm very happy to furnish you with my phone number and my email address, answer any follow-up questions you may have, personally go out with you on the boat, accept critiques, suggestions, anything of any sort, because I really personally would love to see this develop into a true partnership and grow in any way that you see fit. Did you want me to, I discussed briefly the website and the branding with the city, but if there's ways that you see, short of changing my name or the boat's name or my father's name, that you could enhance, that you could see us enhancing the way that we sort of showcase Madeira Beach as a city, I'd be more than happy to hear those and to hopefully be able to accept those changes. So,
Madam Mayor, members of the board, just a couple of items looking at the service agreement Exhibit B. One of the things that we need to work with the operator is clarifying the language as it relates to the contribution that the city would be eligible to receive if the gross receipts are over the $150,000 in year 4 and year 5. Just speaking briefly with the city attorney and the finance director, there's just some language in there that we need to clean up, so it's nothing that would be an arduous process for both of us to work through that. But the intent behind bringing this item forward is obviously, as we get ready to go through the budget process, we wanted to get the board's direction and perspective so we can bring forward a revised agreement and then ultimately set it for a board meeting for you to make a formal discussion. But if there is any additional information that the board desires before making a public policy decision, certainly we can provide that to you, but this was just the first step. It had been communicated at previous workshops that this was something that the board wanted to come back before them for discussion, and so basically staff is requesting direction as to how you would like to proceed, and then ultimately we will schedule this item for a formal board meeting for a decision by the board.
Well, I think obviously we would like to proceed, and I'm sure we will be wanting some additional information before we, and I, for one, definitely, I apologize, I've never been on the ferry, and I intend to do that before make any further decisions.
Let me know, and I'll join
Yeah, I
you.
think the whole thing is a good thing to go, but where I have the issue with it is the city subsidizing it. My phone blew up after the last meeting when this contract went through. And I, for the record, did not vote for it. But it literally blew up with people calling me, going, why is the city putting money into that? So I have to listen to both sides of that too.
Oh, absolutely. Did you have a chance to elucidate to your citizens, your residents, how the RFP process works and how when the city puts out, say, if you need new
I
sidewalks?
understand that their issue is subsidizing it with city funds.
Do you also refer to if you need a new sidewalk or need a new parking lot or need a new structure in the city, funding that? Do you also call that a subsidy?
Well, you're talking about Clearwater Ferry. Clearwater has a huge parking lot down there where they pick up, right there at the new marina they built. They're parking the cars there and they're probably paying to park their cars there. So they're getting subsidized somewhere through there. So that's keeping the cars off of Memorial Causeway, which is what backs up. So they had a real need for that. I don't see a real need for the car thing. You're already picking people up there on the beach for the most part.
Right.
So if they're here by car, by taxi or whatever, they're here. But it's the residents that are upset with subsidizing a private business.
Yes. I understand that it's deemed a subsidy. However, we are supplying a service that the city requested. So unfortunately, and I've even called it a subsidy as well, I don't think it's actually correct to do so, because if the city, like I said, requests a service to be performed and a private business competes for that opportunity and the city grants it, that's not referred to as a subsidy. If I'm correct, that's...
With the city paying for it, it is a subsidy. It is. Either way you look at it, it's a subsidy.
Well, because if you put out an RFP, you usually aren't asking for a
Right.
people are not asking for a subsidy. They're just giving us,
They're asking to be paid for the service that they're performing, which is exactly what we're doing. And actually, I wanted to follow up on this. In the agreement, we are subsidized for 60% of our operation, 60, and that's only for 3 days out of the week. So this could also help you, Commissioner Oakley, when people request this, that the money that we receive is 60% of 3 days of operation, but we offer the city a 7-day service. So when, Mayor Black says that, it's not a subsidy that they're requesting in an RFP process, that's correct. But what it is we're being paid for rendering services to the city, and we do render services to Madeira Beach citizens at a 50% rate. So that could also help in explaining it. And I respect and I appreciate your concern about the word and the definition of the word subsidy, because I myself am a small government person. I don't like the government being involved in private business. But what I'm trying to explain and have been trying to explain is that transportation 100% of the time is a government-funded and supported concept, as well as it never makes money. So this is why we come to the city, is because it's about the city, it's for the city, it's with the city. It's not something that, honestly, I'm not involved in the profit side of things. I'm very infrequently involved in the operation. I have to ask my dad on a regular basis why the heck he loves this so much, because it's not very profitable. It's both not profitable, it's very expensive to operate, and it's difficult because, especially right now, coming into a city and asking you to embrace something like this, because it's new. And it's not traditional, and it appears way too fun for the government to be involved. So I'm also concerned with that, and at any point, if you want to ask me ways to sort of explain it to people, I'm happy to go to their home and talk to them, take them out on the boat and show them, because I'd hate for you to have to continually field these nasty phone calls, because...
It's the nature of the job.
Yes.
That's true. Well, and I think you're right. Public transportation often is subsidized, so there is an argument for that. But as Commissioner Oakley has said, we're getting a lot of feedback from people saying, we don't want to subsidize that. What about my business that caters to tourists? I don't know.
See, and this is what I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is something that I deal with in Holmes Beach so frequently. Actually, the city attorney looked at me during my comments and said, I've driven to your boat. I know people drive to your boat. Their whole concern in Holmes Beach is parking. So because the city attorney had embraced our operation in one way, she had no way to see us as another way. So I'd ask you and ask your constituents not to judge us as a pleasure boat operator, despite the fact that, yes, we have essentially been doing that for our entire history. This is a diversification, okay? The Tampa Bay Ferry is a different business than Hubbard's Marina. And despite the fact that our business operates in a beautiful community on waterways that people typically use for fun, and I admit to you that the demand is here today, but the demand is not here at the level of Clearwater. But it will be with the developments in Madeira Beach, with the developments in the growth of our beaches. People also are going to stop taking rental cars from Tampa Airport and from Clearwater. They're just going to get here, take an Uber to the beach, and be on foot and ride free beach ride and get on the boat. And the more that cities understand and embrace this technology, the more efficient we can get, the more we can grow, the more practical and transportation-esque we can be. But without this early investment, without the conversations we're having today, we're never going to have the opportunity to perfect and to get to that level. As well as, like I said, we're going to get to a point where our beaches are so busy, we don't have time to find a new operator. Let's say, my dad can't afford to pay me to be a cheerleader anymore. And you're going to get to the point where, hey, Mark, can you throw together a boat and, kind of put together this operation and pick people up from here, here, and here? Yeah, sure, we could probably do it, but it would be a lot sloppier and a lot less efficient than if we had the opportunity now at a modicum of city funds to put this together and to perfect it, and hopefully in partnership with you and in the way you want it to be. So you have input at this point based on our partnership.
Madam Mayor, also, if I may, with respect to what the terms and conditions are in the request for proposal, certainly in most cases, the scope of service, what they call the contribution, it was a payment for services. So that's one of the things that when we do have this discussion with the board again, we will have an attachment of what the original proposal or request that the city was looking for to provide some additional insight, because in most situations when you have an RFP, you are requesting a service or a proposal to provide X, and as part of the negotiations, that is something that is discussed at multiple levels on the contract negotiations. But I can tell you from the city staff perspective, and our planning and zoning director can probably provide a lot more insight, I know can provide a lot more insight, is any way that we can provide for folks to traverse our community in alternative mechanisms versus getting into a vehicle and going from point A to point B, we certainly need to make sure that we promote that. I really do believe that there's some things that working in collaboration with the private firm that we can promote and encourage folks to utilize that tool and that mechanism, even if it's a way for them to get to work or opportunities to advertise and promote. We have the fortunate opportunity here that people are in our community, they want to traverse our community, and so obviously we know that that's challenging at times, but we did want to get kind of the board's feeling on the level of service, what's being provided. Obviously, we know that the contribution from the city is a sticking point for some, and we can have a further discussion with the private firm to see what arrangements that we can put forward, whether it's additional marketing and promotion and exposure to the city, and then bring something back that you can really think about, that you have all the data and information in front of you to make an informed public policy decision, and then inform your constituents as to why you voted X or Y. But this is really kind of to feel out what are some of the things that you would like to task staff with, working with our partners to bring you back something that you're comfortable with. We do want to preserve some type of operation, but it's a level of service decision and a financial decision that you as the board have to feel comfortable with. But I really do believe with the folks that are in the room, I think we can get to a point where everybody's comfortable and be happy that we have such a program in place.
I think this is truly a double-edged sword. Number one, at our meetings that we had, we talked about decreasing the traffic on the beach. How are we gonna do that? The cars, all the traffic, because it's gonna get worse with all the development that's going on. How do we do that? But on the other hand, I understand Commissioner Oakley's point of view of subsidizing, and, I got calls too after the last one. So it's really, we have to weigh this whole thing, and, like what Ms. Hubbard said, if we drop this now, how do we put this up down the road? Will we be behind the power curve? We've got to start planning for the future and decreasing traffic and everything else. So I think it's very important that we really think deeply on this and how we want to do this and how we want to move forward with it. I know it, when we had our first meeting, that was one of the things that just about everybody said, that, we want to decrease the traffic. We want to cut it down. It's getting too bad, and it's only going to get worse.
But this really isn't decreasing in traffic. You still got people that are getting to the beach. They might be walking over to a dock to get on a boat, but their car is still here. It's still parked in the parking lot.
I understand, but what I kind of see is like, right down 150th, people come across the bridge, they'll park their cars there.
ABC Marina.
At
ABC Marina, Bill Carnes' property.
Bill Carnes' property, and then they'll get on the ferry and they go from there. So maybe that's them not driving down the beach. And I don't, we don't have the answer as to how to stop or decrease the traffic. I'm just saying we need to think about this as maybe one of the alternatives for decreasing the traffic,
Can I say one thing? First of all, it was a really nice presentation. Thank you, Corey. I think that what Jonathan is asking for, though, at this time, I think that it's going to have to come back to a workshop anyway. So I think, are you looking for just proper verbiage or proper, you're not looking for a consensus of who likes it and who doesn't. You're looking to go forward in a proper contractual form?
What I'm requesting of the board is that to give me direction as to, do you want the city to work with the private firm that's providing the service to bring back 2 or 3 options in a contractual arrangements that addresses some of the items that we've heard today, and then make a determination as to which arrangement that you feel comfortable with? Or is the board saying that this is something that we're not going to consider in the future? So really just providing some clarification as to how you would like for us to attack this situation, so we can bring you back exactly what you're looking for, and so you can ultimately make a decision one way or another with respect to the service, because we're getting ready to be in the budget process. Obviously, they're going to get ready to be in the summer months, and we'd like to get this wrapped up as soon as possible, working with the city attorney. But I still think there's some things in here that we can incorporate on some cross-promotional opportunities and things that the city can really benefit from. It's just what the pleasure of the board is, and staff will respond accordingly.
Well, I think that we need data-driven decisions, and we don't have enough of that data to make a decision. We can make a decision to go forward to get that information, but that's as far as I can go at this point, because without the data, it's just hard to
A couple
make an
questions.
intelligent
And to
decision.
offer an option is still not, to offer options is still discussing it. We're still not at a
Exactly.
point. Because I'll have to say that certainly for 2 years, I stood just where you're standing, and I said, no, we don't want it, we don't want it. Or we want it, we support the idea of the business. It's a great business.
Privately, though.
But I didn't support the idea of the citizenry of Madeira Beach supporting it through the city, okay? Options, offers are certainly always to be listened to. We can't take a vote, we're not really even taking a true consensus. We're just saying, go forward and look to see what other options there are.
Right.
Mr. Evans, I feel like, I'm sorry, Deb, you're done.
But I was just going to say, I think that I have to say that the current situation as it is, the going forward with the $25,000 certainly doesn't suit me, doesn't suit the people that I know that I represent, because that's why they put me here. But I'm not saying I'm not open to listening to. I don't want to give any false feelings,
If I may did you have, sorry.
I just wanted to make a remark to the city manager, Mr. Evans. I think the idea of maybe a gathering of 2 or 3 different options and bringing it to the board and let us take a look at it to see what we have there and, you know, what is offered at that time. That way we might be able to make a more correct decision, you know, at that point. you know.
Absolutely.
There's two things I'd like to ask. First off, Madam Mayor, you know, this Big C thing says we embrace and support this. You know, I think at the next Big C meeting, you need to be pushing the other mayors to get on board and financially support if they want to embrace.
That's tomorrow.
Well,
Tomorrow
tomorrow,
morning is
Matt,
when they're
you
going to
need
discuss it. That's right.
get prepared.
Well, actually, it's funny
This was
that,
signed 2 years ago. by
This
the
one?
way. Yes.
They're discussing it.
No, not this, yeah, that one.
Okay.
I requested that it was put back on the agenda for the Big C this month, as well as I'll ask for next month.
this-
You know, Mayor Black, tomorrow, unfortunately, I have to be at a Coast Guard meeting, so I'm not going to be able to attend, but Doug Izzo's going to speak in my place. But I actually appreciate that comment, and I'll let you know that 2 years ago, when it was voted on, that oddly enough, the number one person to speak up during the vote as to whether or not this would mean that the Big C would have any financial burden was George Kretikos, who's the mayor of Clearwater, because he understands that it does cost money to operate a system like this. So he immediately said, well, hey, does this mean that we're on the hook for anything? No, this is simply, and this is what I'm trying to illustrate to you, is that this is simply a signal to other beach communities that this is viable transportation, right? Today, you may, Commissioner Oakley, you may not be able to tell your constituents that, hey, we're taking cars off the road, here. Although I would disagree with that statement wholeheartedly, that I think that carless vacations are on the rise and people are not taking their cars to communities anymore because there's ways to traverse it without your own vehicle. But I recognize that, we don't have commuters on our boat right now. But I submit to you that in the very near future, there's a chance that we will. And we want to have the city of Madeira Beach's buy-in for that. And let me tell you a story, too, about Seafood Festival, and this is a little bit embarrassing, so I hope you forgive me. What's the biggest driver of, what's the biggest tourism event of the year? Seafood Fest, right? What's the biggest concern about parking and traffic congestion? And the thing that we all shudder in our boots as it approaches is Seafood Fest. This year, I sat in a parking lot in the hot sun in a lawn chair for 3 days, taking $10 per car and parking people in the old Love Rocks plot. People would pull into the parking lot, drop their car off, and get on our ferry boat and be dropped off in Johns Pass. I had an abysmal number of people get on that boat, considering how cool it was and considering what an immense project the Seafood Festival is. I think we started parking people around 9 o'clock in the morning and ended about 7 or 8 p.m. And we just weren't able to connect with the management of the Seafood Festival or the city and to explain to folks that this is an option, despite maps, despite sort of the marketing that we did. This is a perfect example of our function. Okay, the Sugar Sands Festival, I tried to reach with the Clearwater Ferry management the past couple of weeks and sit down with them, and they were like, don't talk to me until May. We're in the middle of Sugar Sands. Guess why? The Clearwater Ferry, their biggest reason for existence is special events. I have to harass people in Treasure Island to list us as a transportation alternative for their special events. You know what everybody does? Pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for buses to load people in at the school and various other places. In Treasure Island, they do the same thing. We're still stuck on buses where people can walk from their homes, people can walk to or get to Jungle Prada and park. There's various opportunities for us to shuttle people from parking lots to special events like Johns Pass Seafood Fest. There's no transient boat docks in Johns Pass. It's the largest waterfront destination, and there's no place for people to bring their boats, but we pick up and drop off from there. And I sat in that parking lot while, just this measly amount of people. It's because nobody knows about it. Nobody knows that it's an opportunity. And we're here at your beck and call. If you say, hey, this parking in this event is going to be a pain in the butt, Corey, can you organize this? Hey, we want to put together a city function, to get our entire staff on the boat. Anything that you see as a legitimate form of transportation that we can provide, we're here. We're ready to do it. In fact, we would be thrilled for the opportunity because it's perfect painting of the example of how we function, Seafood Fest. but it was so underutilized this year. Of course, we're going to do it again next year, because all it takes for things like this to succeed is continuous effort and continuous reminders to give you fodder to talk to your constituents about, right? I mean, how cool was that to be able to park there and just get a boat ride over the pass and leave your car behind, because who wants to fight for parking in the pass? Even on a regular day, there's a line out the door. And at Seafood Fest, it was triply as bad. So this is a thing that you can talk to your constituents about, special events, as well as, you know, if you look at any sort of boat operation and sort of their quarterly costs, $25,000 is literally a drop in the bucket. I mean, to call it a subsidy is generous. I mean, yes, in the off season where we're barely puttering by and we're paying staff every day and fuel is expensive and boats are expensive, yes, it matters and it's valuable. It's especially because it sends the signal to the city that it matters. But this type of funding for this type of operation is certainly low, considering the private investment. If that would help, you know, speaking to.
Well, if it's just a drop in a bucket, I don't know.
You know,
No,
$50,000 up
50,
to.
that's right,
then
it's
it'll be
already been
75,
paid, that's
and then,
right.
you know,
I know.
yeah.
Oh, no, I
Then it's-
understand.
Then it's really gonna,
Ma'am.
we're starting to talk.
Well, it's the fact, I guess, it's still the mentality, okay, of so many of the people in my district, and, you know, I speak for most of those people, that it's a business. It's still, you're operating in a business. And it's a wonderful business. It's a great business that you have, okay? But $25,000 might be a drop in the bucket to you, but it's really not a drop in the bucket to me. I think it's a substantial commitment from the city, if the city, you know, chooses to do that.
I only mean that to say, if you look at
I know.
any other city functions,
Oh, okay.
absolutely anything that you do in the city that you pay for render a service in the city, I mean, a very close friend of mine is a concrete mason. He does the curbs in Indian Rocks Beach all the time. Okay, the amount of money that it costs to even replace curbs on 3 blocks of a city is an immense cost. Yes, it's fun to go on a boat. Yes, you see the boat floating out there. Yes, it could feel like a subsidy. It is not a subsidy. The city is paying for rendering services. The city is paying so that we can give Madeira Beach residents a 50% off of the ticket price. The city is paying so that we can bring people to John's Pass without their cars. It is rendering a service. It is not a subsidy. Let's join together and not call it that anymore. That's in definition not at all what it is.
It is
one
what
of,
it is.
one of the
What is it
recommendations,
then?
I'd like to make a recommendation kind of, that maybe we look at going from 25,000 to 20,000. So then, you know, your constituents are, okay, we're working our way down, but we're still helping this, because like I said, the traffic thing is a thing. You know, even if they come across the bridge and park there, we've taken them off maybe Gulf Boulevard.
You're working your way down in the funding as the service is growing and the number of people we're servicing is exponentially increasing.
I understand. But, you know, as your number of people are increasing, you're bringing in more cash flow also. So it works both ways. I'm just trying to,
So,
I think,
City Manager,
I think
could
a
you,
couple of things I have that would be helpful. It'd be helpful in a data perspective to know how many of our residents are taking advantage of the 50% off tickets. How many Madeira Beach residents actually ride this ferry. And then it'd be helpful also to know the routes and the stops. That's not in the materials, and I know it's maybe changing. There's 2 components to what the city is looking at from their perspective. And there's the one that's the traditional one that I think that has been addressed is benefits to business in terms of bringing customers to John's Pass and to maybe to other route stops, but we don't know where they are.
I
And
saw
then the other aspect I think that's been ignored by your company relations with the city is the benefits to the residents. And so in order to know what the benefits are to the residents, we need to know what the routes are. And routes for residents should be convenience routes. They should be routes from City Hall to Publix or employment centers to places where residents live, where our population centers are, routes to and from the city center, from City Hall to to John's Pass. Those kinds of benefits that take commuters off the road that are city residents and make the ferry available at a cost efficient way to get around town. If it's inexpensive, I know now we're getting 50% off the rate, but that's still $10 for the day. Maybe there's some way that city residents could buy a booklet or a pass and have even further reduction in the amounts if they buy multiple passes for multiple days or monthly passes, some way that the residents start to use the water taxi as an alternative to their car, and look at that. So there's benefits to residents versus benefits to business. Our residents are looking for routes that are convenient for their commuting inside the island, inside Madeira Beach, and then connections to other adjoining communities like Treasure Island. But then there's also the benefits to the business, and I think we've talked about customers, but not about workforce and employees, trying to get employees to use a water taxi to get over the bridge and then leave their car on the other side and bring employees and workforce to the island, but not bring their cars. And I don't know, that has something to do too with routes and where commuters might park on the other side of the bridge. And then looking at ways that the city can assist. Perhaps there's the dock that I see down at the end of the park right here on the left. I don't know whether that's possible to use that for a water taxi route or desirable to use it. But if we are subsidizing or contributing, maybe we should have a water taxi stop that's right here at City Hall, if that's a convenient place for city residents to use. I don't know how many children that are Madeira Beach residents use the water taxi. It'd be helpful to know that also, because we do have big after-school programs and summer camp programs. And the 3-day pass is $50, so at 50% of that, that's still $24.50 or $25. And I don't know how that compares to Uber rides around town or other ways of getting around, but that would be helpful to know and helpful to focus on the benefits to the residents piece. How can we make the water taxi integral to a resident's way of life here for Madeira Beach residents?
Part of the resident thing, though, when you talk about the residents, they're gonna take their car to John's Pass. They park for free. And why would they wanna pay $10 to take the water taxi when they can go park their car for free and they've got the convenience of having their car?
Yeah, those are the things we need to address, why residents would want to, and make sure that it's economically and desirable as well as.
I know I'm
Madam
the only one of residents that I even talked to or know of that's used the water taxi, and I used it because I won the ticket in a raffle. So, and that was great, and I
raffles.
enjoyed it,
Madam Mayor, if I may, I know there's a lot of things that have been said as a part of this meeting, and I would just hate for us to attempt to draft public policy on the dais. Certainly, if the board will indulge staff, I would like the opportunity to sit down and have the conversations with the operator, with the attorney, finance, even our planning and zoning director, to really put together a comprehensive review and some proposals and options so you can get the entire breadth of what we're talking here, because I'm pretty confident that the operator is willing to consider and make modifications to make the arrangement work. From the staff standpoint, any opportunity that we can take 1, 2, 3 cars off the road, that's less of a chance for an issue, and that addresses some of the congestion concerns we have. But we would like the opportunity to come back to this board in a workshop discussion with some options and proposals, with some revised contractual language, walk through those items with the board and get a sense of where you are. Because currently we're reviewing what the contract calls for, but obviously there's level of service concerns. There's concerns or some questions about how the residents can benefit from that. Communications and marketing is a critical piece from it, because I can see a situation whereby if you look to increase parking and you have other mechanisms for folks to get there, there is a way that you can provide some benefit or mutually exclusive marketing opportunities where both parties participate, because we have in the contract as it stays now, after a certain threshold, there's components in there where the city can increase revenue. So their success is our success. So I think we owe it to ourselves to sit down and have a more in-depth conversation on how we can structure an arrangement that's mutually beneficial to both parties. But I think based on the dialogue here, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the staff side. And if you would indulge staff, we certainly would like the opportunity to give it our best effort and provide you with something that you can really feel comfortable with based on the direction that we've gotten from the board members.
Well, I feel certain we do have a consensus that we want to go forward, get more data. And I think, Mr. Brooks, you had a lot of excellent ideas, suggestions. We need to follow up on those as well. So that's what we're looking for. Do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Corey. Next item on the agenda is the Waste Connections Recycle discussion. Mr. Evans?
Madam Mayor and members of the Board of City Commissioners, this afternoon, we have our Public Works Director, Mr. Mark Sacano, and our recycling operator here to provide some insight on the contractual arrangement that we do have. And the crux of this discussion stems on staff's desire if there is a desire from the board to consider a one-year renewal, that we would ask to negotiate for the term or for the purposes of looking at what our long-term recycling program is going to look like, feel like here in the city of Madeira Beach. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the Public Works Director, and then we have our partners here to be able to address how the changes in the recycling industry have impacted every community here in the state of Florida and in the country for that matter.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you again. Mr. Evans covered it very well there. Our current contract with our recycling contractor started in January of 2014. We've removed a couple of things off the contract since then, but it has remained intact. We have taken advantage of the extensions, and talking to the city attorney, we need to provide one more year extension. We are currently picking up the recycling 1 day a week on Wednesdays. This did take a lot of getting used to from the residents, but I think having one common day throughout the city helps everybody. Everybody knows, and it's kind of easy to get through. Ian, Ian is here from Waste Pro to
Waste Connections.
Waste Connections.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Waste Connections. And we are here today to ask the commission to let us move forward with negotiating with Ian and their group to extend the contract for one more year.
I have no issue with that at all, because you know I like recycling.
Yes, ma'am.
Last year, when we went through the same exercise, I requested a brochure be sent out in everybody's utility bill, or the city get it out somehow for residents to know exactly what can and cannot be put in the recycle bin, and what makes it contaminated. Because actually, I didn't know that plastic bags, Publix bags, couldn't go in recycling. And I found that out. And so I think we need to do a better job educating the public on that.
Yes, ma'am. I will.
And I didn't see anything I asked for it last year.
Okay. Well, I will make sure that we get, I'm sure that you guys have some stuff, and I do have a brochure that we have and hand out to residents when they get their recycle bins. So we'll definitely put that together and make sure that it gets sent out to everybody, kind of like we did for the stormwater and the roads project down in Boca Ciega Bay.
Appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marscano, quick
Yes, sir.
question. If I'm reading it wrong, please educate me. But they went from 2 times a week to 1 time a week, correct?
It went from, no, it was 2 times a week, 2 different sections of town. So now they do it 1 day a week, the whole town.
Okay, because it said 2 pickups per week. So I didn't know if that meant.
2 sections of town.
So the town was divided into 2 sections. Okay, that answers my question.
So that includes all residences, including condos?
No, ma'am. That includes all residential units. It does not include the condos, but there is condos that have opted into that. I didn't know if maybe Ian, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, the current contract, which ends at the end of this year. Hi, Ian Boyle from Waste Connection. The current contract that ends at the end of this year does have parts with condos. It's on a price per pickup. When the contract first started, many years ago, this was a service that was being picked up by the city. A couple years back, it was switched over where condos would have to pay for their service. As such, several condos opted out, so it's less condos that are participating. I think it's a number off the top of my head, 37, 36 condos are participating, and it's on a price per pickup charge.
And we do the administration of that. We do the administration of that billing that goes out. So that's a portion of cost that we are not currently recovering is that billing for the condos recycling.
And can they have as many pickups as they want? I mean,
Pretty much. I mean, if somebody calls me, that's just like with sanitation. If somebody calls me and says, Dave, I need the trash picked up, we go get it, but they're charged accordingly.
right.
And from Ian's group, they would charge accordingly for recycles.
Because I think our condo used to, and I'm not sure if they do, are now getting 2 pickups or just 1.
They vary, all the condos are different.
Yeah, they do.
When we first started, considering every condo is different, and some condos need 3 times a week, some condos need every other week, some condos need 2 times a week, and, the condo on one side doesn't want to be dictated by the condo on the left, so every condo is different. And we found even in certain condos, depending on the board, there's one board member wants 1 time a week, one wants 3, and they do 2. So it all changes. So I think we created a program which allowed us to go to each condo and say, okay, what are you looking for? What do you need? Some condos want once a month. Some condos want, so we needed to create a flexibility where in curbside programs, you kind of just, you create the day, you do the pickup, and everyone gets the service. Where condos, it's kind of different. So.
And the individual homes, then if they need an extra pickup, then they just call the city.
If the home, we do not provide a service for extra pickups for the recycling, just for sanitation.
I'd like to know if Waste Connections would consider changing out for the residential, all the residential pickups, some kind of a recycling basket that's got a cover on it, whether it be the wheelie for the same cost that we're paying now, okay? Do you all have anything else that you can offer? Because it's, all that stuff, just half of it gets thrown out on the street. And
Right now, the contract is 18-gallon bins. If the city would like to see carts, there is a cost to that, and we would have to just talk to the city about that. But under the current structure, we can only provide the 18-gallon bins.
you have nothing else to change it out to, then
Not at the
how
current.
much
Not
at the current rate
more
structure.
would it be? Or do we have any idea? Do we have any kind of an estimate?
I've gone through this particular exercise at a previous employer, and most cases, the waste collector enters into a longer-term arrangement with the government entity because the cost to acquire the totes for the community at a pretty sizable capital investment. And so what they do is they break the actual capital cost and payment over the duration of the contract. So it would be an increase in the cost to be able to do that, but that's something that would be negotiated more so for a longer term agreement. If we were to get into an agreement for a 1-year period, most likely the waste provider or waste hauler would not put out that capital investment, because after the agreement, those cans are yours, so they're gonna put out the money for it, and then if they know that they're not guaranteed any additional work, they've lost that capital investment, and sometimes it's to the tune of a couple $100,000, depending on how many totes that you need to be able to provide that service. So that's something that we can look at in a long-term contract when we go out for a full-blown request for proposals on.
Okay, because are there any other alternatives? And I know, for instance, in Treasure Island, they have, if you don't want curbside pickup, okay, and I think they do have it, you can actually take your stuff to the big, huge bin, down there by the rec department. And didn't we
have
used
that
to have that a long time ago? Do we?
We still do have that availability, and it's at the Public Works Yard. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And that boils down to what Commissioner Oakley had communicated about the communication piece. If residents know that there is a larger bin to dispose
Right.
recycles, it's not gonna go into the trash can after you fill up your 18-gallon bin. So that's something that we need to do a better job as an agency to communicate that there is those things in place, but the public doesn't.
Right, doesn't know about it.
Doesn't know about it.
Okay, yeah.
One of the things, if you gentlemen can speak on the recycle market and the commodities, that's something that over the past couple of years that's changed, and that affects rates and how that does affect rates, because most folks, the misconception is that when you're taking this recycling off, that you're making copious amounts of profit, and recycling should in essence be free, but obviously things have changed and the world economy has changed. So if you can hit on that.
Yeah, to be brutally honest, it's not a good time to be in the recycling market. Recycling is basically a commodity, so on the back end, it does have some value. But that value has dropped with what's happening in the global markets. And it's, to make it simple as possible, China has basically doesn't want to be the world's landfill anymore. So they have actually basically been very restrictive on what they can accept in. And as such, that has basically caused a backup of all materials, because the people we sell our materials to are not buying like they used to. As such, the prices are come down. On cardboard, which was the one bringing in the most money, what we had budgeted for probably a year ago is down 66, 70%. And on top of that, in areas where we don't have a processing plant, we have to bring it to somewhere else. Our processing, actually just down south, our processing has gone up 133%, our processing fee. So we're getting less money bringing in, and it's more money to process it. A lot of these processing plants, due to the fact that China is not accepting the material like it has in the past, they're only accepting kind of the cream of the crop. You have a lot of backlog. MRFs all around the country have piles and piles and piles. At our MRF in St. Petersburg, anytime you have contamination, when you have, stuff that can't be recycled, you actually, you throw it into a dumpster and then you take it to the burn here in St. Petersburg. On a weekly basis, we had like maybe an 8-yard out there. We would put it out and clear it out. Now we have 30, 40, 40-yard roll-offs that we have to do now, just because the amount of contamination, the amount of stuff they won't accept. It's definitely a challenge now. And what we've been told, at least what I've been told by our recycling DM, is that for the rest of the year, it's probably just going to get worse, and it's going to be a little while until the markets kind of alternate themselves to kind of make up for what China's not buying. And it's changed the whole market. The whole market's so much so that prices have gone up. It's actually in certain cases it's cheaper to burn it than it is to recycle it, especially here in Pinellas County. And I'm just being honest. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So I know our contract is up, and there's obviously some discussions about looking at a renewal, but the prices won't be the same. It's a tough time to be in this market. Tough time. Myself and all my counterparts around the country, not from my company, from all our competitors, are all having these very frank discussions with municipalities all throughout the country. So, all throughout the world, actually. You could just, if you do China and recycle ban, you'll have 1,000 articles. CNN, C-SPAN, USA Today, what,
And it's so easy to get contaminated recyclables. That happens more often than you realize.
So when we think we're doing the best thing, sometimes we're not.
well, I think it's still the right thing to do, except for the fact that the product has to be cleaner. It's not stopping, I mean, we're as haulers, talked about it today, we're seeing a lot more cardboard. More people buy stuff on Amazon nowadays. I mean, see the amount of cardboard on a regular week. So people are still gonna need that material to make that cardboard for the people that are shipping stuff. But now, they can ask for cleaner stuff, cleaner material. As such, more stuff is being rejected. And it just kind of trickles down to the point where, we'll bring in a load. I'll give you a good example. Sarasota County Schools have had that contract since 2015. First time ever, I got an email this week letting them know that we had to reject, the processor we brought it to rejected loads because it was contaminated. Years ago, they would let some contamination go because the price of cardboard was so high. But nowadays, they can't do that. So it's
That's why I think if we educate the public more on what actually makes it contaminated and don't put it in there and this is good and.
Because if they don't know, it's not going to change.
And how do we inform them? I mean, what's the intent on informing all of the?
They all get informed through the county. You should all receive stuff from Pinellas County Solid Waste on recycling. We'll put it in our next newsletter. I'll get enough, more information to Mr. Evans. We'll do the best we can on our website, and from staff side, we'll do the best we can to get the word out to let people know what contaminates it, what makes it become a problem. We're doing single stream recycling here, so.
Yeah, I think that the citizens hearing it from the city would mean a lot.
Yeah.
Not from another source, because sometimes they'll pick it up and it's with their bill and then they'll throw it away,
Right, they
without
don't
reading
think
it. But I
Pinellas
think
County's
if y'all
involved.
inform us, I think that we.
That in certain parts of the state, there are haulers that have issues with municipalities that have contaminated material, more so. But Madeira Beach is not in that category. We've never really had a concern about contaminated. We've never had to make a phone call to the staff or to Dave, but say, hey, listen, we need to figure something out because it's everything. Madeira Beach is pretty much everybody on the beaches. They
The
do.
residential part.
Yeah, it's clean material. It's just the amount of material that's backing up, because normally we could basically bundle all that stuff up and sell it. Now it's just sitting in storage rooms all around the world, not just Pinellas County. We're talking all around the world, and many countries are resorting to having to bury it, having to burn it. Some people are burying it in the landfill, hopes to basically to recapture it somewhere down the line. We're just in one of these realities. Once China made their decision and changed all the acceptance in January 1st, 2018, it trickled down everywhere. So Madeira's beach material is clean material. It's just you're part of, unfortunately, the trickle down, unfortunately.
What percentage recycle now?
Here, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say that, it's definitely over 50%, which is way above the norm. And then in season, it's a lot more. It goes up.
The pickups and everything go up. Some condos will add. It changes.
But the beaches are very good with recycling, very good, all the way down. We have 9 contracts here on the beaches, and they're all good recyclers. And everything ticks up in the in season, because people have more material to recycle and so forth and throw out. So
I want to continue it. I hope that we can. I want to continue it.
Well, that would be, sorry, Mr. Evans, go ahead.
We certainly want to put together a public communications campaign geared around recycling, and some of the most effective recycling campaign is when you get your young people and your seniors advocating for recycling. And I can tell you, nothing is more effective than a little kid telling their parent not to do that. And so we can easily go over to Madeira Beach Fundamental and really do a big communication piece and maybe even some cleanups to where they can see it firsthand how someone will discard something that's 9 feet away from a recycle can and throw it in the trash or throw it into the ocean or what have you. So we can certainly work with our partners at Waste Connection, Public Works, and our school partners and some of our civic organizations to do a better job on informing the public and getting those brochures in people's hands.
Good.
Is there a consensus from the board for staff to move forward with negotiating in terms of the conditions of a 1-year extension and bring that back for consideration?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the amendment to non-conforming structures ordinance. Director Portal.
What timing, are you watching us on TV?
And I would be in here all plugged up, except my computer won't hold a charge today, so I had to keep it plugged in the whole time. This room doesn't have outlets. So I apologize for the delay here. And hopefully this will locate properly.
Linda, you need about a 5-minute recess, or?
Are you looking for outlets?
No, I've got the outlet.
Oh, okay.
Plugging into the screen. There you
Okay,
go.
there we go.
Hoping it will communicate with me.
That's my next career opportunity. I want to be the photography guy that does screensavers.
Yes, no, isn't that great? Oh, here we go, it's going to actually speak to us. I had it all up so that we wouldn't have to go through this. All right.
Oh, okay.
This is the wrong one. All right. Well, in the event that we have graphics, I'll show them to you. What we've got here is an ordinance proposal for a text amendment to the Land Development Code that has gone through the plan board already. Yes?
We can go forward with this item, but if I read this right, it should be the non-conforming structures before
It is.
these ordinance.
Yes. I'm trying to get it up. It won't come up, so I
Oh, okay.
started talking about it.
Oh, okay. I was just confused.
Yeah.
Do you have some pictures of actual properties?
I didn't bring any in this time. We have properties, there's hundreds of them, with non-conforming side setback issues.
A couple examples of, I know of a lot of them, but I was just wondering where you were coming from when you came up with all this. Sorry about that.
Right, we get so many requests in for people who want to do just a little bit of an addition. You know, a lot of our homes are really small, and what's happened is that the original subdivisions for Madeira Beach didn't have setbacks on them. So people were building on lots, basically, huh? You do know that.
There's some that are just back to back.
Exactly.
They don't even have a backyard.
But then we came along and adopted setbacks over the years, which made everybody who didn't meet them non-conforming. They were legal, but they were automatically non-conforming. And so they couldn't make any additions to them. We have a lot of, as you know, small homes that people want to do things, modernize a bit, like put an extra bathroom in or closets, because people come in and, you know, they show me their floor plan and they've got one closet in the whole place. And so a lot of times people want to just make a little bit of an addition, but the most rational structural direction to go is along the line where the nonconformity is. So if they're into the setback a little, the best thing to do for that home and for the structure and the roof line is to continue along that line, but they can't because the code doesn't allow them to do that. We do have an administrative waiver that allows us to go through more or less the variance process and evaluate it by all the same standards that we use for variances. And that if they meet all of those conditions, the staff can waive up to 15%. But 15% of 5 feet is 6 inches. You know, it doesn't really address the need on a kind of flexible basis based on what's really on the ground. So, and we get quite a few of those in. So what my hope was that we could adopt a policy that would allow us some more flexibility. This would go back through the plan board for review, just kind of like we do for redevelopment projects. Wouldn't have to come all the way to the commission, but it would give the opportunity for people to come in, explain what they want to do, and have a public hearing so people in the neighborhood could come and comment. And give us a chance to see whether there's really any negative impact or if we can have some flexibility to allow for continuing along a line, not extending further a nonconformity and not creating new nonconformities, but just giving some flexibility for redevelopment. The advantage to that is that it's obviously most commonly going to affect our older homes. We're shortly not going to have much affordable housing left, especially with insurance rates going up. And so anything that we can do to make our existing homes livable and keep people in their homes, I think is something we need to consider. Let me see if I can. Very interesting.
Madam Mayor, why don't we take 5 minutes while she's getting this up?
Okay.
I appreciate that. I don't know what it's doing. Now I found it.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As soon as they stood up. I had it all up there, it just wouldn't come up.
They should have, there should be a computer there.
Yeah, like,
Needs to happen is that any PowerPoints that should already have it loaded up and should be able to control it from back there and pop it up.
yeah, that's how most places do that. Well, this computers, when it first starts up, is so slow, I swear. I had an AT&T 1400 that was faster than this thing. And I don't know why, I've asked them. You can't get on. Yeah, it won't work.
I can't access the drive, I can't access any of the programs that they've downloaded on there for me. And they've known for like 2 weeks, but he gets so busy here on Wednesdays that he never makes it up. We've got a list of things that we know. So that's why I've been working in that desk so much.
Yeah, he spent about 2 hours trying to get mine to communicate with the system, and now I asked him, why is it so slow? Because I need it for meetings, and I push things in and nothing happens, and I sit and wait and wait and wait. He said, I don't know, something about the internet, probably.
Probably. You're gonna see their heads explode. Suggest that we switch over to Mac. I did that to one of the IT guys, and he was like, whoa, we don't really.
Yeah, because they don't service me. They don't use it.
It's the only computer I've used for the last, since 2011. But I stopped. I was at UCF then, and I quit the second I left UCF. At work too, I tell anybody you hire me in one condition. I'm working on the damn test. Oh, we've got to let know think that.
Yeah, it's thinking, it's thinking.
I've told my wife this. I said, every time I have a meeting with you, I learn something new. So I walk out, I go home, I'm like, hey, I learned something else today.
Draw all these things one line at a time because we don't have a graphics program.
Oh, yeah. You're going to the Keys?
I couldn't find, I did too, couldn't find, I mean, I couldn't find anything. Even chimes, there was one word size. It was 14, 16, which would be a little boy size for me, would be fine. And it was so tight. And that lady size. So I'll keep looking. You never know what you might find. Oh, good for you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, I've done business for them before. Yeah. I wish we. Nancy and I think that it says, or Nancy Hodges, that whereas the public has historically, or have historically, is it have? Anyway, I put a question mark by it, because it looks like it's looks like has is grammatically correct.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's good.
I keep hitting on it. Okay.
Right, so behind you, I have some graphics that just show, you know, what setback encroachments look like, but I provided this just to give you an idea later, if you want to ask questions, what the implications are. Most of our neighborhoods have one large and one slightly smaller setback on the side. For instance, a 5 and 7 in the R2. And quite often people are over on the edge, sometimes on both sides. Often we have people with encroachments on the front, either with the garage or with the main house, and then quite often we have extensions on the back. They may have been porches or utility rooms or things of that nature. But this all kind of grows out of the fact that the lots are really pretty small. In R2, 80% of the lots are only 40 feet wide. So, I want to record it. So, in recognition that the narrow lots and the dimensions and the pre-existing development patterns of some of our older neighborhoods. Exceptions to the setback requirements may be appropriate. The Planning Commission considered this, talked about it extensively, and they decided to recommend approval of the staff recommendation with some additional language here and there I'll go over with you. The point, most of the side setback issues are with the R2 and 3 lots that are 50 feet in width or less. And we would be proposing these only for legal non-conforming. If somebody goes out and adds something on and then comes in and wants to extend off of it, if it's illegal, we would not recommend approval. Oops, excuse me. So what we're proposing is that the extension along the line of the existing side yard encroachment could be considered by the Planning Commission for approval, provided that they do not increase the depth of the encroachment into the setback, a minimum of 3 feet of setback from the structural wall is retained on one side of the house, and a minimum of 5 feet of clearance remains on the other side of the house. This is important for firefighting reasons, or renovation or delivery, or just the ability to walk along the side of the property. The side of the structure that is subject to the reduced setbacks must be improved with a roof gutter system that's adequate to carry all the runoff and direct it away from the neighboring property. This is always a concern when people know that they're putting on a second story, or that they're extending at all. We have a lot of situations where one person's house is draining onto another person's property and creating runoff problems. So this would be a condition of being able to extend an encroachment. And the extensions along an existing encroachment line can be approved only if the neighbor on the extending encroachment side indicates support for the extension by a notarized statement. And this should have been another bullet here. And then nothing in this provision can be used to approve the creation of a new nonconformity. The reason I have recommended the neighbor's approval is that we do have a precedent for that with docks. People will go and get their neighbor's approval if they're getting too close to their property line and bring in a notarized statement approving that, so that they know they aren't creating a problem. Additions of a second floor, this is a different kind of situation where somebody they want to add on and go up. Currently, we can't permit that because our code says that you cannot in any way extend a nonconformity. So what we're proposing here is that if it's on the existing footprint, if they want to go up to second story on that, that we would allow the additions of a second floor to a legal nonconforming structure in the R1, 2, and 3 districts, as long as it meets these conditions. Now keep in mind, we do have a redevelopment program that allows people to come back and put a new structure on existing footprint, even if it's non-conforming. So this would have kind of the same effect. It would put the house up, portion of the house up higher. The extension or addition does not create any new encroachment. It doesn't go any further in any direction with the encroachment except up. It does not violate the height restrictions, obviously. Provides a minimum of 18-inch clearance between any building element and the property line. And the reason I'm pointing that out is that oftentimes we've got houses that are pretty close to the property line, and you don't want their roof to extend. We usually measure a setback from the wall, but you want to consider that the roof line would go out pretty close to the property line if they're only 3 feet or 2 feet off. It does not increase the depth into any existing encroachment, and the neighbor on the side or facing property where the encroachment is proposed to be heightened is indicated by, that their approval is indicated by notarized statement. Oops. Now, there are some conditions to keep in mind. I propose that no permanent improvement of any kind on that area where you're encroaching on the setback, if you're extending the setback, that there should be no permanent improvement of any kind, including mechanical equipment or storage units that exist or will be placed or installed in the 5-foot clearance. Remember, they had read that you had to leave 5 feet open on one side of the house. And when people put in their air conditioning units and stuff, they take up 2.5 to 3 feet. We allow them to encroach halfway in, but we can't allow somebody to extend encroachment on one side so there's barely any setback at all, and then on the other put all their mechanical units. Then you wouldn't be able to get through. And that includes not installing landscaping that prevents access on that side. They could landscape, obviously, but need to be careful. And if they are going to put a fence there, that it needs to have a gate for access. The required clearance area is not a reduction of the setback, and we need to specify that. It's a minimum clear path of access between the front and the rear yard. And nothing in this provision can be used to approve the creation of a new nonconformity. And then, whoops, it's the wrong one. So if they are encroaching, as this one here is, into their 5, they have to assure us that on this side, the other side, they have at least 5 feet open before this extension over here could be extended. The building is where we count that now. And most eaves in older houses are only about 12 inches. With a guttering system, it's not much of a problem, but some houses don't have any guttering. If they're going to do this, they're going to have to install guttering. Sometimes we get people who come in, they already have an encroachment into the front, and they want to extend out the roof here to a second story over the garage or something of that nature. That's why I was proposing to allow the extension upward. Not all extensions would be permissible. Usually when you're going to ask for extensions, we get a lot of these where people have porches and they want to fill it in. It may never have been actually part of the structure, and that's not a legitimate extension. Also, typically when you do this kind of extension, or the ones, you would only do it by the amount that was kind of average for the neighborhood to try to keep some consistency. But we'll come back to you when we go over the code entirely to propose other options you can have for designing your various neighborhoods and dealing with those kind of proposals. Now, this is just additional language. There's nothing crossed out or removed from any of the other non-conforming sections. Are there any questions?
And sometimes in form-based codes, they'll actually put diagrams like that into the ordinance. We may want to cut and paste and put that in there as an example so people can see it in the ordinance.
Right, and when we rewrite the code, we'll be coming back with a form-based and a performance-based code, and you'll see a lot more of this. This is, we're just at the workshop, and we decided to come to the workshop between the Planning Commission recommendation and your first meeting to give you a chance to steep on it a little bit.
Well, I did have the opportunity to talk with you about it because one of the citizens in my district asked me about it because this is what they're coming before. And so I walked the property and I walked a bunch of other areas, and I personally thought it was a very good, maybe not a solution, but it's a very good example of putting together a better planned thing for affordable housing for people who want to stay in their houses, who have those little bitty lots, and this particular house was a small lot, and she simply wanted to go straight up. It just made a lot of sense that it was something, she needed the room, it was something that was going to be able to leave her in the house. She has no problem with the neighbors on either side. Isn't there one thing that you had told me that they require, that you would require a statement from the neighbor on either side? Was that, or was it just the encroachment side?
On the encroachment
side, okay. But what about in the example of the going up? Is that still, I mean, that's got to be on both neighbors, right?
Yeah, and the one across the street.
Okay, if they're going up. But it certainly seemed, I know when we talked I kept thinking when I was walking the city that when we had our meetings on April 5th and 6th on how the community should move forward with a lot of, our little neighborhoods and that kind of thing. I just thought that this seemed like a very good solution to a lot of the problems that we have with a lot of the older housing. And I think I asked you, Linda, but I'll ask you again because I can't remember. Since you've been with Madeira Beach, like how many examples of this type of thing have you seen where they've had to go to variance or they've had to go to obviously not doing it, okay? And the fact that maybe this would give them more options.
Most of these kind of problems don't go to variance because variance is tied to the land. So people who need a variance have a lot that's non-conforming. It's unusual in some way. But for these, I've been here, how long have I been here? Since August. And we've probably turned away 20 proposals. And I have 3 in the basket right now who are submitted and hope that something can be resolved that allows them to build.
Right, people want to stay in their homes.
Right.
And they can't afford, or don't want to pay for, something really bigger, like Madeira Beach. And they're improving, because most often they really are improving the total.
Right. And I often, always, I will sit down and meet with people if they have this kind of a problem. And quite often I can propose a different design. So if there's a way for us to get around an additional encroachment, I will recommend that. And it usually turns out to their betterment, actually, the project comes out better that way. But sometimes you really cannot extend without extensive expense. Keep in mind, all of these are going to be subject to the 50% limitation for value. And on a really small house, that's not very much to work with. And sometimes if in order to move the extension, you'd have to like rewire the entire house, and just the expense that would go into that, or your roof would be considerably more complex, and it would just, there's no budget for it.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, one of the things that when we had our retreat, back to the Vice Mayor's point, is that this particular public policy allows to preserve the eclectic nature of your neighborhoods and provides for those opportunities to have the mixture of the housing that you have here. In the event that this type of public policy is not considered, that's when you're going to find the tear downs and the rebuilds, and obviously that's going to impact property values and all the other ancillary fees that come along with that. So this certainly allows for folks to stay in their home longer, provides the opportunity for accessory dwellings that as they age in place, that they can move into another unit that is easier for them to effectively manage and maintain versus the single-family home that they may have. And that's one of the things that the director and I've had the conversation is making sure that we allow for our residents to age in place and they don't find themselves being priced out of this community, because that is something that they moved here because of the location, the affordability of our community. So things like this is just the first step in making sure that we remain an affordable community, an attractive community, and don't do anything to change the nature of who resides in our community.
This is strictly for existing homes, correct?
Correct.
Because
It
I
would
know-
not allow any a new nonconformity. We do have the redevelopment process in the code that allows people to come in and go through a planning process and approval process to build a new home on exactly the footprint of the old home, even if that footprint was nonconforming.
I know right after the three of us were elected, a gentleman came in, I don't remember who he was a developer, I think, and came in and was trying to get variances because the lots were non-conforming, and that he wouldn't be able to build and et cetera, on the lots because they're non-conforming lots. And I just didn't know if this had anything to do with that, or...
we can deal with non-conforming lots through the variance process. If he wasn't getting a variance, they may not have been as non-conforming as he was representing. A lot of people consider their lot to be challenged or unacceptable to them, but as long as it's still conforming and it doesn't have any unusual characteristics about it, they need to meet the setbacks.
Thank you.
Nope, that's all. Abstain.
Fees ordinance final review. Mr. City Manager?
Madam Mayor, members of the board, this item before you is the last discussion before we recommend bringing this to you in the format of a ordinance. Staff has gone through this particular fee ordinance and has made the modifications as discussed with the board, as well as we've had the opportunity to have discussions with the Finance Advisory Board, or the Budget Committee, I'm sorry, and they have provided their perspective, and we've included their perspective in the document that's before you this evening. Staff stands prepared to answer any questions or comments or concerns that you may have before you, and then ultimately we'd like to bring this ordinance to the Board of City Commissioners at the first meeting in May, and then schedule it for the subsequent second and final reading. So staff is prepared to answer any questions. Also, it has been communicated to me by one of the board members about our cash handling procedures and how we collect revenues, and our finance director is prepared to address that in the event the board wants to hear specifically on our accounting procedures and how we anticipate managing the additional revenues that we would collect in the event that this ordinance is adopted.
My main concern is the parking, raising of the parking meter money. Because when it was originally, when we originally talked about it, I said no, because I wasn't in favor of raising any of the parking rates. And with the, I guess what sold it to me as far as selling it to pay off the debt. And to me, when it was only quarter time, and I thought that was a really smart idea, a really good idea. Because now we're using money that visitors are paying to pay off our debt. And that's why I agreed to even go the extra quarter to 50 cents. I mean, the sooner we can get rid of that and get that burden behind us, the better off the city's going to be in the long run. Right. But then it comes back to the point we can't make any commission in the future do something that they could, because they could go in and undo anything we did. So I started thinking about that. Why don't we just have a yearly ordinance saying, this is what whoever's on the commission, if you choose to be fiscally responsible and this is the route you want to go because this is why we did it to start with, then this is the route we're going to go. And pay off debt with it, put it in a fund and pay the debt off. And they could go for a year. You could do it from when the person was sworn into office for that year. You could wait till the budget cycle comes around. However it gets done, but I still think we need an ordinance that designates where that 50 cents goes, because I don't think it just needs to be a windfall to the city. Because that's not the way I was sold on it.
Madam Mayor, if I may, to Commissioner Oakley's point, in the conversations that had occurred with staff, there was a desire to earmark a portion of that money, the 25 cents, towards the debt and curing some of the debt service issues that we have as an agency. And that is something that is a policy decision, and the board can certainly do that. One of the things that staff is looking at is also that additional 25% that we're considering as part of this particular proposal, to look at earmarking it for capital investments, for some cosmetics improvements, having the opportunity to look at the raw data from the survey thus far. It's been communicated to you, the board members, ultimately, that community aesthetics is a major priority for the community as well as infrastructure. So in the event that the board is considering in increasing the rate to 50 cents, I agree that the monies needs to be earmarked. I agree that it should be put aside for specific purposes. The news report that came out did not mention the component where I said that it would go to help pay off some of the long-term debt that the agency had. But nonetheless, I think it needs to be a situation whereby if it's the board to say, let's put aside 25 cents to pay the long-term debt, when those call dates are available, paying down our debt is great. And then looking to dedicate some monies for cosmetic improvements, infrastructure, those types of things. In conversations that I've had with the finance director, we do want to look at a 3 to 5 year plan to really wean ourselves off on being so reliant on a volatile revenue stream on the parking side. We want to utilize that revenue for capital one-time purchases, so it's not something that ends up funding general government. Our concern is that in the event that we have a situation over in Johns Pass and we have a sewer main or water main break and it shuts down that roadway, Village Boulevard, for a period of 45 to 60 days, it's a huge significant impact to the agency, and then we're going to have to look at pulling into our fund balance to fund day-to-day operations. So we want to have a more in-depth conversation about the long-term fiscal sustainability of our revenue streams with the board. But with this fee ordinance, this is something that you as a board, if you adopt it, will be reviewed on an annual basis by virtue of a journal entry that we can take that money and put it aside in an interest-bearing account for the purposes of paying down that debt. But also some of the things that we do want to consider is more a cash-on-hand philosophy, that if we can get to a situation where we're not borrowing money and we're paying for, if we want to buy an apparatus, we can pay cash versus going to the bond market, unless, you know, it makes business sense for us to do that. So we have looked at some different options. The board, I certainly believe, should consider what staff is proposing as the 50-cent increase, but specify exactly where you desire the monies to go. And any board that would look to reverse what is specified here in the ordinance, they would have to go through a 2-reading process, but we can also put something in place as a resolution that complements this, that says the board desires to see 25 cents go towards debt service, 10 cents go towards, you know, capital investments, infrastructure associated with roadways or stormwater, or, well, you have a stormwater fund, but, you know, parking improvements, cosmetics, aesthetics. You can do that by virtue of a resolution. So in the event the board decides to make, a future board decide to make a decision, we also have that resolution in place, so your peers years down the road can see, why did they make that decision? Well, here's the corresponding document to support that. So basically, staff is looking for, and obviously that's probably the most contentious item in the fee ordinance, but looking for direction as to how you would like to proceed, and would you like to effectively, like Commissioner Oakley said, dedicate the 25 cents, which I think accounts for, on a conservative level, about $160,000 a year, that 25 cents.
Yeah, 25 cents would be a moderate approach would be 168,000. It could be as much as 220,000.
I didn't say the quarter, I said the whole 50 cents.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
The whole 50 cents
Would be about 400.
would be a moderate of 413,000, an aggressive approach with not that many people resisting it would be probably estimated 480,000, and investing that over 5 years would be $2 million.
And the other question I have about it is, what is the game plan for Archibald? Because that money can't come out and be used for any of this.
Well, and that's one of the things that we're in the throes of the budget process and digging through each of the operational line items and finding out what is charged and what is the rationale behind them, certain costs being charged to certain accounts, and then going to provide the board with some recommendations on that as we get ready to go through the budget process. As it relates to the 50 cents, and if that whole 50 cents goes towards to pay down the debt, what we're doing is you're utilizing capital today to pay for a debt obligation tomorrow, and that's well and good, but we have some immediate needs as an organization today that if you look at our parking lots throughout the community, every single one of them is in desperate need of some cosmetic repairs as well as some infrastructure repairs where risk management has some concerns. If they were to go out there, we have some concerns on the boardwalk. And so it would be my recommendation that if the board looks to earmark a portion of the money towards a debt service plan or being more aggressive towards debt service, that only a portion of that, but also provides the financial liquidity as an agency so we can address the immediate needs infrastructure-wise to be able to address what we have going on. Because if we take that $413,000 or $464,000 off the table, we have certain call dates that if the call dates and the final maturity dates are not available to us, we can't pay down on the debt. So we have the money sitting in an escrow account, and we have issues today that we need to address. There's copious amounts of things that our restroom areas need some improvements. We have some brick paver concerns, our walkways in the past,
The
sidewalks.
restroom thing can be addressed. I mean, anything for the 50 cents for Archibald, when you pull that out of it all, can be addressed. You can do the restrooms. You can do anything in any other park or recreation facility within the city once the needs at Archibald are taken care of. That's how it was all set up. That's what the deed says. So we've got money there to address some of that.
We have monies to be able to address a limited number of items, but when we look at it holistically and everything that we have tasked with an organization, I'm just concerned that if we utilize that entire revenue stream for the purposes of paying down debt, when you pledge for any debt service, the intent behind it is that everyone shares in the collective burden to fund X debt issuance. So if you utilize all the money you have today to pay down your debt, you've charged your residents, taxpayers, visitors today's money to pay down for an asset that they're going to have for 50 plus years. And that's why they allow for you to have it for a duration of time, because they believe that the way the finance is, everybody shares in the collective burden to fund that capital investment. And our debt that we have is not bad debt. We have a tangible physical asset. And in my conversations with the finance director, what we want to do is bring in our financial advisor to look at some plans and mechanisms that we could effectively accomplish what the board wants to see done, paying down the debt, but also addressing some things that we need to address. Right now, we do not have a perpetual care fund for this building or our recreational complex. So if something happens, we've got to find the money to pay for it. We should have a perpetual care fund for the cosmetic improvements or any capital improvements that need to happen on this facility or any other facility that we own and operate. So what staff is really asking for is to allow for a portion of those monies to be set aside for some of the things that we have going on here and now, versus putting it in an account and watching it continue to grow and then throwing it at a debt service payment. And I would hate to come to the board and say, you know what, I need an additional $150,000 to purchase a generator or to acquire new apparatus or to fix sidewalks, et cetera. And we don't have the means to do that. And we know that increasing the millage rate is a non-starter. So that's kind of where,
What if we decided not to raise it at all? We would be right in the same bucket that we are. This discussion would have never happened. That was the only reason it sold me on it. because of the fact we were gonna do something good and take something off the backs of the residents. Now it's something, because we've all been going, well, where's the $2 million coming from in 19 that we gotta pay for the debt service? So that was the whole reason behind doing this. And that is totally 100% why it's sold. Otherwise, I would just say take it off the table and let it stay the same. It's not, we need to go all or nothing on it.
And I was totally of the opinion, I guess, before I became elected, I definitely wanted to go up on the parking. I've always been an advocate of going up on the parking because our tourists were paying for it. But like Commissioner Oakley, when I first realized that someone was talking about paying off the debt with it, I immediately got very excited about it because I'm not just thinking of the debt, and I certainly do understand your thoughts too, but I'm just thinking of, I am thinking about putting down that debt. You know, I'm not comfortable with it.
We've never been in
At
debt.
all. Well, I'm not comfortable with it because that was one of the largest, it was one of the biggest, most important things that people would ask me when I was going around. They were very concerned, and I know sometimes it's small-minded, a lot of us, okay, that we think that the fiscal, you know, we're paying the debts every month, we're paying them, but I would feel very comfortable if this, and I do have some other comments on the fee schedule too, because I want to go ahead and get past this also, because I think it's very important that we start charging for all of our, you know, for all of our fees. So I would like to just think that on that particular item, that the $2.50 an hour, the $2 still is, $2 stays separate, and the 50 cents gets put into some kind of a restricted fund, and the entire 50 cents go toward the down payment of the debt on that particular item, so that it would make that item number, what, 442, $2.50 an hour, and it would be contingent upon an ordinance providing the 50 cents be put into a restricted fund to pay down the debt at this time, okay, for at least this year and maybe next year. But can I go on the other couple of items that I had in the?
Can I say one thing?
Let me say something before you go into the other things.
Okay.
And I think what the city manager's trying to say is that, you know, if we do that and if we set a quarter aside, if we set the whole 50 cents aside to pay down the debt, but then we have to go out and purchase something, we might have to take out another debt. So rather than doing that, if we split that, you know, we have the other money there, so we don't have to go out and borrow again, you know, and am I correct?
This is becoming a windfall, because they don't have it now.
I understand that, I understand. But what happens tomorrow?
But they came to us with a quarter.
But what happens tomorrow if, like he said, if we got to go out and buy a generator or whatever, and it costs $150,000 or $200,000, where is that money going to come from? You know, and I guess that is, am I understanding you correctly, City Manager?
Our concern, and we've had conversations internally, that in the event that we earmark this entire 50 cents, that it will end up coming to a point where in future discussions, we're going to either have to reverse that decision to be able to address what the concerns we have here and now, or it's going to be another situation where you're going to have another debt issuance. And I think the reason why it was so surprising to folks why we issued the debt is because we have waited so long to address some of the facility needs and equipment needs and deferred that. And so by deferring that, inevitably, the price tag goes up exponentially. So what we wanted to do is look at it from the standpoint, we understand the board's desires to say, put aside 25 cents and we'll save that money up and then we'll pay towards the debt. The other 25 cents, utilize it for capital infrastructure similar to that restrictions that you have on Penny for Pinellas. Not to pay for additional staffing, not to pay for additional things, but for instance, we have a situation whereby, and I was going to have a conversation with the fire chief, but we have a $800,000 piece of equipment that we utilize to traverse our community to respond to medical calls. It would be more advantageous and a wiser deployment of resources if we had rapid response units, that we had F-250s that were able to get out on the roadway quicker and you're gonna preserve the life of that almost $1 million asset. So those are some things that, you know, I've been thinking about, and the other stuff that we have on the public works and recreation side, and even the rusting that we're starting to see in parts of this building, is how do we address those things without saying, you know what, board, we're gonna need to look at our millage rate or other revenue sources. And the finance director can, you know, provide a little bit more insight on some of the discussions we had and some of the challenge we have specific to revenues, expenditures, et cetera.
And Madam Mayor and Commissioners, when I first proposed the quarter increase in the parking, I did see it, and I talked to the Vice Mayor at the time, as a way of paying down the debt. And I indicated to the Commission last year in preparing the budget that we've got to start putting something aside. And our financial advisor recommended putting something aside so that when that 5-year call date came in for the Series 2013, for this building and the firehouse, that we could pay it down and it could make an impact. But after that, and in talking to Jonathan, I recalled when I was doing the budget for this year, we were so restricted on, I kept cutting the capital. The capital's contribution from the general fund to capital is just a little over $200,000. That's not acceptable. We have capital needs here, and I will tell you, starting into the budget process, if we don't find a revenue stream to deal with some of these capital infrastructure problems, we're going to be in a world of hurt. I am in full support of the city manager that if you don't want to take, I can understand, and I feel there's a happy compromise here. I feel like the quarter could go to debt, but you know, we have to find another revenue stream as we go into the budget, or we are looking at a millage increase.
We do have another revenue stream. The fees themselves. It's like $120,000 a year. These new fees.
The additional revenue streams that are going to be produced associated with that's something that once instituted, we can definitely look at what the numbers are. But what's happened is the general fund has been subsidizing the planning operations. So in essence, instead of the developers or those that are having plans reviews paying the cost, your taxpayers have been funding the operation. So this helps take away some of the burden off the general fund by instituting these fees. But the other thing is, in November, we have a ballot initiative that is going to pass overwhelmingly for the additional homestead, and our projected fiscal impact of that is going to be about $200,000. So right off the bat, Tallahassee is going to take away $200,000, and your finance director's already communicated that our CIP, our capital improvements plan, is dwindling away. And if we lose additional money, you may find yourself where we're only funding operations and we're not able to put money aside for capital. And that's my concern, is the capital investments, that's the infrastructure, that's the core things that local governments have to focus on. And with limited revenue streams and restricted revenue streams, you know, we have a challenge moving forward. And so we're trying to hedge our bets and be proactive, because we don't want to come back to the board and say, you know, that 50 cents that was in there, we really needed all 50 cents to go towards capital investments, et cetera. But I think some incremental increase, we can really get some shovels in the ground, address some of the concerns, the infrastructure concerns, and start seeing some improvements. Because if you look at our beach access, all our beach access are in need of some cosmetic improvements. There's a litany of different things that we can go through that we have to do as a city. So our main goal here is for the board to consider a hybrid approach that allows for some situation that the city can experience a benefit from the actual increase. We've even had the conversation with the provider that we can offer incentives through the app. And if somebody downloads the app, you can say, for the summer months or the slow seasons, if you download the app, you can reduce parking by, you know, we can give them a 20 25 cents an hour discount or what have you, or 50 cents. You have the flexibility if they do have that app. So, you know, there's things that we can do if the board wanted to lessen the impact during the slow seasons. We can institute that, but we want to make sure that whatever fiscal decisions we make, that we're not looking back and saying, you know, we should have done something a little bit different. But we do know that the debt is a major issue and a major concern. But on the other side, we have some challenges on the infrastructure.
You know, one more comment too. I did a projection based on February's data, 5 good months into this year, and prode rate for the rest of the year with things holding the same for the city manager. And I think he wanted to know financially where we stood. And basically, if everything holds the same, the general fund would basically be about a break even, little close to 80,000, which is really nerve-wracking when you know that there's some things down the pike in the next couple of months that might take us in the other direction on items that are not budgeted that we need. And if that's the case, that break-even point is going to go into a negative point. And so it's a little bit of a tenuous situation right now. So while when I first recommended the quarter and paying down the debt, we weren't into this far into this year to where we can now do some projections, and we do need another revenue stream to take care of some of our capital needs. So again, I'm in full support with the city manager in that aspect. So I quite frankly see a happy medium here and a compromise to take the quarter for the debt and quarter for the capital, and I think it's very much needed.
Well, the issue is, excuse me, is that we voted on it based on the fact that it was going to be all to pay down the debt. And so maybe, but I see the point, I understand that. So maybe, like you said, a compromise, maybe it's not 25-25, maybe it's 30.
In the beginning of the city manager's conversation, he says, I want to find a way to wean us off parking. So that's just adding to the problem.
Well, I do want us to wean us off parking, but I know that we have some immediate needs, and doing that right now would be extremely premature. So what I've had the conversations with the finance director is we want to put together a plan whereby in the next couple of years that the $2 million that you collect for parking, maybe $1 million of that goes towards funding operation, and $1 million of that goes to capital infrastructure investments, and it's pay-as-you-go, cash on hand, because we are in a portion of the state that we can experience inclement weather, hurricanes, flooding, those types of things. And if we lose, 30% of our revenue over at John's Pass or over at any parking lot, we find ourselves in a major fiscal challenge. And so Walt can attest, we are looking at virtually every revenue stream, every expenditure. We're looking at even the emergency management funds and how we manage that to be able to put us in a stronger position financially. But the concern is that that's a very volatile revenue stream. It's based on tourism, weather, those types of things, where your ad valorem revenue, you collect 95% of that revenue at minimum, where your parking can change today, tomorrow. So the volatility of that concerns me, and how we become so reliant on that as an agency that we have to put together a plan, and it's something that we have to look at it long term. But we have immediate needs now that I think every department director can communicate, some infrastructure deficiencies that we have that have to be a priority of the agency moving forward. But one of the things, if it is the board's pleasure to move forward with the $2.50 increase, or the 50-cent increase, this item will be accompanied with a resolution that basically the board can say 25% or 25 cents to debt, X amount of cents to this, X amount of cents to that. And so your resolution will accompany your ordinance. So you'll actually, if you adopt the fee ordinance, you'll adopt both of them on the same meeting. So we'll have direction from the board as to where you'd like to see those monies, earmarked. So we can do that. We can even leave the line, we can put 25 cents for the debt, and we can leave the line open for infrastructure, other capital investments or whatever, and the board can say, by virtue of a motion, you can put 10 in there, you can put 5 in there, you can put 3 in there. Whatever the board's pleasure is, we can draft a resolution that allows that flexibility for you to make that decision the evening of that meeting. Just whatever direction the board wants to go.
Well, as I said, perhaps we don't want to do 25-25, but I would be in agreement with doing, a resolution that we would, and decide how it would be distributed.
Good. I know the Vice Mayor had some questions on some.
Yes, I just wanted to go over to, it's in the same schedule, but I noticed it, actually, I was going to.
What page?
Really, okay, wait a minute. It's page 13. It's back under the recreation center rentals. It was something that we had discussed at the April the 10th meeting when we were talking about it, okay? And it wasn't changed, okay? So that was my point. I just wanted to bring it up to,
Which
okay,
item?
it's lines 530 through lines 533. And remember, we were discussing about the cleaning fee being inclusive in one area and then and then adding it in another one? So
Yeah,
I'd just like to get clarification.
Jay, I had a conversation with Linda about this particular item because we were going to make some cleanup. But basically, what the Vice Mayor is communicating, the cleanup fee is found, I believe, on the next page.
Yes, on 560, on lines 563, 64,
Yes,
65, 66.
So those deposits and the damage and refundable, so basically you'll see the fee and then you've got to go to another page to effectively find out what that fee is.
You're
So it's
including
more-
it in one place and then, yeah.
Yeah, you're referencing it in 530 to 533, but you have to go to 565, which is on another page, to see what that rate is.
Right.
So that's something that, when we go back to bring the final item before the board, we just need to make those changes. So,
Right, and then on, also under line 573, where it talks about park pavilion rentals, and we talked about, it lists Archibald Park and it lists John's Pass Park, but it didn't list Kitty Stewart or Causeway Park or the Bell Tower.
yeah.
And shouldn't those, and I mentioned that on April the 10th, but I just caught it again that it wasn't added. Okay? So, and there wasn't even, there wasn't a place for it, so I don't know
Yeah, we'll add
what
it.
the rate would be, okay? It would be the same, and maybe it can,
To be totally honest, I'd say with the exception of the bell tower, the other ones aren't in there just because we haven't had any requests. It's not, we didn't omit it intentionally,
okay?
it's not one of the two
Should it
popular
be?
ones. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No, you're
Oh, okay.
100%
Cool,
correct on that.
okay.
Yeah.
It's another opportunity for us to, and we don't advertise Kitty Stewart Park, and that's our mistake. But if, we add that fee in there
A
and
lot of people have parties there.
yeah, create it
Yes,
as an opportunity to rent. The amount of parking but anyway, we'll definitely do that just to see how it works. We get it on our
In case
website.
people ask about it, you've already got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great suggestion. Thank you.
And then on the next page, on 590, on line 595, I'm thinking, why did I do that? Oh, yeah, because shouldn't that just be a continuation? In other words, you got A, B, C, and then C being park pavilion rentals on the previous page, and then on the next page, line 595, would that be a different category? Or is that being too? Would that be adding the letter
athletic
D?
fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
athletic
We also,
fields
we
are.
were gonna do that, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
It's just
are
a
different.
formatting thing.
Yeah, and they're actually seen as a different, you wouldn't compare them to a passive park. These are more your active parks, so that's why the separation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, how do we collect the fees from the users on all of these different items? Do they come into?
We can, our finance director can certainly provide you our cash handling protocols, because obviously that is audited as
Okay.
part of our annual audit. But if it's specifically as to how the transaction and recreation occurs, we can have the recreation director, whichever you prefer.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking that too is I had thought about asking it the last time, but when we were presented, or when we were given the 7 most recent events that happened, okay, like the weddings and stuff like that, and I was just curious how that money gets into the city coffers. Do people, because it seemed like it was conflicting information, okay? It seemed like some people sent it in, some people brought the money in. I want to make sure that everybody's paying what they're supposed to be paying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, just a good example of those 7 events, one of those folks lives in Michigan. So they've been on the phone with us back and forth. We email them an invoice, or, you know, a contract, and then they will mail us the check, and we make sure that there's a payment.
They pay it in advance?
Oh,
Yes? Okay,
it depends. I mean, depending on the event and the.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, you know, yeah. It really, I'd have to sit down with you with each of those individual events and see.
Okay.
But as Mr. Evans mentioned, we do have a fee collection process that has been in place since I've been in that building. And, you know, we have to follow that. You know, it's the law, it's our law, so we know where every penny's accounted for and everything else. So it just really depends, you know, if, you know, the special events, we have a lot of fees that are paid up front, but there are some things that we have to bill afterward. If we say that we're going to dump the dumpsters twice and we do it 5 times, and we bill them for 5 times. So there's some different processes, but it's all accounted for as far as those were
Okay,
concerned.
because people, and I'm thinking about it too, because people in other communities, when they use for instance, the services, when they use the ball fields or the tennis courts or whatever, in other communities, there's like a pass-through or a gate that they have to pay before they actually use them. And I'm just wanting to make sure that we're in line, that we're actually getting all of the fees from all of the users. Because I know one of the questions on Jonathan's survey, which I thought was so good, and I thought I'd ask for an update on that too, since you've gotten a bunch of the surveys back, is how do people feel about paying these fees? Remember that?
Yeah.
That was, are people willing to pay it, or are they, you know, complaining or try to get out of it? That plays an important part, I think, in our budget process when we start that, and we, not to do with fees, of course, but to determine how important is the entire picture.
Yes, ma'am. And some of the things you'll see out there, like you know, we'll have ball games this evening. They have registration fees that are attached to those. So there's not necessarily a field rental fee for every single one of those games. It's because we organize it, whether it's baseball, soccer, or any one of our sports activities out there. And that's the other portion of the fee schedule that you saw, is the activities. But there's not we don't get down to the nitty-gritty of going, okay, our 8U baseball team, all right, you guys are going to play 10 games. You need to give us the rental fee every single time. It's your fee, your registration fee.
Multi-tournament, what you're calling multi-tournament or
Well,
something.
correct. Well, we do have the field rentals on some weekends, or the college tournament that you guys have seen out there that bring folks to town. That's what those rental fees are for, not for our organized recreation activities. So it's murky, I guess, is a decent description of it, but everything's accounted for as far as the field usage. If somebody's out there, unless it's just a resident that just walks by and says, hey, I want to play catch with my son, I go, okay, go ahead. You know, we're not going to say, all right, you need $20. But if you want to have a team practice out there and you need the field very specifically from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and you're some, you know, Tampa, whatever, travel softball, then we'll put together a contract, send it to you, get the payment ahead of time, and then reserve the field specifically for you, as long as it's not being utilized by one of our programs or a resident activity that is going on there.
Can we add to this contract that residents can use the fields or the basketball courts or whatever for free?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I know they can, but I would like to see it in the document, because if I'm thinking, I'm new to the community, and I'm going to look at what it's going to cost, I don't want to pay that.
Yeah, we can encourage folks. It's just first come, first served basis is what we consider it.
Put that in the document. I think that would be
And we
good.
should probably put, explicitly this is for exclusive rental of the fees. You know, open play is open play, so we can put in there, so if somebody picks it up and says, well, if I wanted to rent the basketball court exclusively, here's the fee that I have to pay. But, you know, open play, we can just put some language in there.
Okay. Is that it for me?
I think that's fine.
Any other questions?
I think we've covered that one.
All right.
Yep. All right, next is the proposed amendment to the sign ordinance. And you have 5 minutes, and the next one has 5 minutes, and then...
Ready to go.
5 minutes.
Oh, that's.
All right. The sign ordinance has been a problem in implementation because of the way we measure signs here and there. There are problems in definitions. It hadn't really kept pace with modern sign definitions, so it needed some update in terms of what was allowed and what was not. And so I've gone through to make those kind of housekeeping type corrections and additions, but more importantly, it was necessary for us to amend the sign ordinance based on the Supreme Court's 2015 decision regarding content neutrality. That is, that we can regulate the size and the placement of signs, or the length of time that they can be placed in a location, but we cannot regulate the content because of freedom of speech. This is complex sometimes, because what that means is if we allow people to have political signs in support of particular candidates, we also must let everybody else have freedom of expression signs of the same size and placement and duration. It also affects what people can place in their commercial signs. For instance, the big pole sign somebody may have out in front of their business, they could take all of their regular advertising off that and put up a personal message if they wanted to do that. We can't regulate the content of the sign. So one of the things that, and I've gone through here and just pulled out the minimal things. Up front, you'll notice when you're looking at the sign code, and again, this is a workshop, so you'll have this coming to you in first reading. You have some time to look it over and think it over. Up front, you'll notice there's a whole lot of red line additions. And the reason for that is that in order to regulate signs and to regulate or limit speech, we need to specify what the public purpose in that is. And so everybody is beefing up the front end of their sign codes to explain why we're doing this. And there have always been reasons dealing with the just the quality of life and the quality of property and eliminating clutter wherever possible. But one really strong reason for regulating signage is that it creates safety hazards for drivers. So we've gone through here and proposed a number of purpose statements as to why we're doing this. It makes the ordinance stronger and it protects you from challenge in courts. As we move on, there are also some specific language in there that states we are not regulating and due to content and that we remain neutral for that. We have to make those kind of statements. We have administrative responsibilities being amended because it used to talk about appeals to the city manager. But this is an ordinance, and so appeals to administrative decisions, like all the rest of them, need to go to a magistrate. So there's just some of that kind of cleanup. We've added in a few signs that are prohibited. When you've been doing zoning for a while, you notice that it's not stagnant, and people are always inventing new things that you haven't covered in your code, and you may like them and you may not. And so I've gone back through this code and have begun your general definitions as well to add things in, specify things that do and do not work. One of these we'll probably come back to you with a little bit more clarification. I know Ralph may want to step in here because the blue language additions or deletions are his legal input. We just have probably one section we will bring you more information on in the future. There's some things like the air inflatable signs that dip down over the road and move around all over the place that actually create traffic hazards everywhere that I specified. There are some time limits and things that were updated for temporary signs. How long is temporary? It didn't specify before. And limits on, some of it was consolidated. You found there were limitations throughout the sign code that were here, there, and everywhere. And in order to permit a single sign, you had to read the whole ordinance. It was very well organized. We will come back to you with more form-based codes dealing with signs and where they can be placed too. It's much easier to read those type ordinances, but for the time being, it was really important that we process this because of the constitutional issues and avoiding any kind of challenge. There's other things dealing with the political signs. We've had a lot of trouble with people putting political signs in the rights-of-way and having to pick those up, but we found that there's a section dealing with political signs that didn't allow them in rights-of-way, but then there was a section that did allow them in rights-of-way, and so we're proposing cleaning that by taking out the portion dealing with the right-of-way, and it's not in the handout version that I gave you because we just became aware of that. The sheriff's brought it to my attention this afternoon even, so that is in section, if I go back here, 102-49, parent 15. That's the only additional change that I made today. And then I gave an effective date. We had an old effective date. If something is legal as of today, obviously it can be improved and corrected, or maintained, excuse me. I specified about the electronic reader boards. Most of the code says that they're not allowed. Moving light and message signs are cluttery. Another problem that we have is that we're very compactly developed and we have commercial areas right adjacent to residential. And if commercial places have flashing, very well-lit signs, it's quite disruptive to residential neighborhoods. And light goes a long way.
Flag signs. Can't stand them. They're tacky looking. Most of them are faded out in a week after they get them.
They're called fluttered flags.
How can we get rid of, they
Yes,
just pop
you
back.
can eliminate those. They're allowed to have up to 2. Most people end up putting up even more, and we end up going around trying to get them out.
140th is very distracting. You can't see around the corner to turn, make a right turn.
Well, they can definitely be prohibited signs. And putting them in, you're never supposed to put a sign any place where it impedes the visibility, especially on corners. It's dangerous.
Well, the building's on the corner.
Okay, well, yeah. Well, that's a problem in a place with small lots. You know, we have buildings right up close to the street, and anything they put outside the street is potentially a traffic hazard, actually.
Can they be banned totally?
Yes, if you will, to do that.
I don't like them either.
Wow, we need to.
Yeah, I just don't like
I
them.
didn't know that they could be banned, I guess. I just.
Oh, certainly. So that's something to consider for first reading. I did have to make some,
Usually if you have a sign that's in existence now and you want to ban it, you have an amortization period that's equivalent to the cost of the sign. So we'd have to see if we're going to ban those kinds of signs. Those signs are not very expensive.
no, they're not.
So you might allow them a couple of months to remain in use, and then you could prohibit them.
Till they
And,
get so faded you can't read them at all?
yeah, and then take them out, and they wouldn't be grandfathered in. So you could take them out, you give a certain grace period, so they could recover their investment in those pennant-type signs, but then you could prohibit
Are you
them if
talking
you
about
want.
the feathered flags type things?
The ones like you put up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
they are
flutter-
expensive.
the flutter.
I just bought 6 at $1,700. So yes, they are expensive.
$1,700 per sign or
No,
for
it's
total?
for 6 of them,
For 6?
yes.
Okay, so yeah,
No
maybe
longer
6
valid.
months or a year if you were going to
Yeah,
prohibit those.
yeah, that'd be faded and gone by that time.
Where are you going to
Right.
put them?
For how long? 6 months?
6 months to a year, yeah, that'd be faded and gone.
All right, we can bring back some language to deal with that.
I have a question.
Not my favorites either.
It says on here for permitting purposes, it's submitted to the building official, that means here to the city? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. But it was saying, in order to obtain a permit to erect or remove, demolish, or alter
Yes.
sign under the provisions, I'd go to the building, okay?
They apply here at the building department. I review them, and then building makes sure that whatever monument or structure they're using is
And,
as well.
you talked earlier about the political signs. Now, I know some of the people in the past election and have put up the big wooden sign. They have to be permitted?
For political signs, no. The problem we had partially, there's a couple problems with those. One was that the way the code read, if you had a really big sign, you could have a really big sign if you had copy on both sides of it, but if you only had copy on one side, it had to be smaller, which I think was directly the opposite of probably what was intended. So I proposed amendment to that.
So, yeah, I kind of read in there that before, I think if you had a sign and it was on both sides, it was considered two signs. And here it says, no, if you have it on both sides, it's only considered one sign.
For the political signs section.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 102 point something.
Yes. They're all 102 point something.
102 point
Point
something,
something.
I know that.
They're not called political signs anymore, they're called temporary signs.
Right.
Oh, that's right, it's 11, oh, I'm sorry, it's the page, well, it's on the show page. But it's ordinance 1126, it's right at 102.155, that's right, temporary signs.
Mm. 155.
Yep.
There it is.
102.155.
Yes. All right. The temporary signs. For special events is what, this is a special events sign. So I don't think that was the one you meant.
No, it wasn't.
No,
Signs during
That's not-
election periods is at 102.194.
I thought that was at the end. There we go. All right.
It's on, under that 194 on the second page. It goes, a double-sided sign shall be considered one sign. Versus before it was,
Right, in terms of its measurement. Before oddly, it said a double-sided sign could have up to 32 square feet, but a one-sided sign was limited to 16, which is kind of the opposite of what you would want to do.
it was backwards.
It was backwards, so I just scratched it and I replaced it with additional language that specified you could have
Says-
16 square feet and you can have signage or you can have copy on each side. It just limits the size of the signs altogether. And then there was a section in here, just above that, called temporary exemptions. And this was a relatively new addition to your ordinance during the recession. It had been proposed that businesses would be allowed to have additional signage if the unemployment rate went up, and that we were supposed to measure the market level to determine when that additional signage would come down. However, I will point out that additional signage doesn't help the economy or employment. Perhaps at that point, some were thinking that was the case, but usually additional signage actually causes a decrease in business because of the clutter. A clean sign ordinance that provides kind of a uniform look throughout districts, not necessarily the whole city, but through districts, is a lot easier for people to follow. But additional signs outside of business doesn't enhance employment. If people are looking for jobs, you don't have to put out a sign to let them know where to go. So I just proposed striking that. It would require us to monitor the economy and the market, which is not only not normally what we do here, but it doesn't provide any benefit. There's no benefit to the city for that. I think that was actually...
I think that every time we work on the sign ordinances, and I think it's a great thing that we do, but it seems like we just keep burying ourselves deeper and deeper. I've seen them, okay, throughout the years, not in the last year or two, and I'd still like to, I guess, be really definitive or really know that once we provide for these changes and everything, that we really can effectively enforce it.
Yes,
We've got to be able to somehow, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I wanted to rip out signs, just yard signs out in front of all these different establishments that tell you to call this Uber driver or this sign for something else. They're just yard signs. They're all over, and
They're all over the
I think I
pass,
should
too.
be able to pull them out. So I guess my question is if I wanted to call somebody tomorrow morning, and you can go on right after this, but who do I call to take these signs away? Who do I call in the city now?
the code
Code enforcement?
Yes, yeah.
And just identify the address where the sign is, the
Yes.
exact address,
Yes.
and they should be out.
And we actually do, I know there's a lot of them out there, but we actually do respond to that. The sheriff's out all the time.
I see them so often.
Doing signs.
Private property, we're not going to pull it.
No, this is all on public right-of-way. This is on Gulf Boulevard. I walk up and down Gulf Boulevard every single day. And every single day I see more signs, and they're yard signs. They're call this for a ride to the airport. And they're not just in one or two places.
Like
They're in 10 places.
The beef jerky place has those signs all over the
I've
pass.
seen them.
Yeah.
I mean, who do I call right now? Because we've got to get a handle on that somehow. Or else what's the trouble? What's the reason for going through this entire process if we can't control the small things?
Right.
And one of the things that we did communicate to the Planning Commission, Linda and I are going to go on a roadshow and speak with the local businesses at the pass as well as here in the downtown core and throughout the community to inform them of what the potential changes are going to be and to really provide some additional clarification on what the policy stands as it is today, but also what the modifications, and to realize that we're trying to get compliance. We're not out here trying to, fine you or what have you. The fine aspect is to drive compliance, but we're really going to have an informational session, kind of a brown bag luncheon, so they know well in advance, once this is adopted, we're going to start enforcing it, and there's an expectation that you have been informed, notification has been provided, and now we're going to start our enforcement action. So there's going to be a public education component. We're also going to work with the local chambers of commerce to inform them and their members. So when we get this adopted by the board, conceivably there should be no one that doesn't realize that this is happening.
Great, okay, thank you.
And
And did the deputy tell us now?
Well, currently our code allows you to put temporary signs up in the right-of-way as long as they're 3 feet away from the,
I can't just yank them out, right?
no.
That's the answer.
But as soon as we get this adopted, we can start
Yeah,
cleaning those
okay.
up. Yes, because
All right.
we took that out. And also, there's language in here that refers to unless permitted specifically in a district. We need to go back and do an overlay district on John's Pass to explain.
There where they couldn't put those banners all up all over the parking lot or
Right.
anywhere that there's a fence. I mean, they look tacky
Right,
and it takes away from the pass.
Right,
And
right.
Now
Those
they've
are-
started popping back up again.
yeah, it's really constant. I know we went for a walk to deal with one issue one day and stood on a corner, and I pointed out about 6 code violations just from where we were standing. I mean, it would take an army to keep up with it. And then there's paperwork with all that if they don't comply as well, and going to a magistrate and the whole bit. It's a lot of work, but our intent here is to get this working properly so that we can get it out and start doing compliance work. Also, I wanted the language in there about districts because Johns Pass is a different kind of place. You know, it's not the same flavor of development that you get around town. And so we will want to be able to allow them to do some different things that we may not want elsewhere. For instance, we have a code that says you can't have a sign that hangs down over the sidewalk. But those placard signs that hang underneath canopies are very appropriate in a mixed, commercial space like Johns Pass. So if they had the opportunity to do that kind of thing, and then we also explained how we wanted to clean up the other stuff. There are ways to make it, to give it a lot more flavor and more color down there without affecting the rest of the city. We can just establish a district to deal with them a little separately.
Makes it visually attractive. It does.
Right, it does.
Some
It
of
does. Right now, I agree. It is difficult when you go into Johns Pass. It's hard to find where you're going because there's so many signs and there's so much clutter that if you're from outside, you really can't figure out where anything is. That's not the intent of signage, you know. So.
Interesting.
Any other questions?
I just have one on, under signs 102-5, number 4. I never heard of a snipe sign. Maybe everyone in this room knows what that is?
Yeah, that's the exact sign you were talking about, where people would just put something up quick and,
Political signs they're called snipe signs.
or, yeah.
What is
Or the, call me, I've got such and
We
such.
should probably
to sell.
describe that
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
because
in the-
look up a dictionary definition or grab some
Right, we'll
explanation.
put a definition in there for
It
that.
says abandoned signs. I know
Everyone
that
thinks of
means.
something different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we can provide a
That's all.
definition.
do that under definitions. All right.
I think it's like those ones they put in the right of way. That
Yeah, it is.
you push
And
your
it-
foot down on and they're wire.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. It's just the kind of dump and run signs where you plop
Yeah,
in
dump.
the run and then you're out of there.
We're
But I think
attaching
that it's,
poles and things like that. That's a snipe.
yeah, I do think that they're defined in the main code. Some of our definitions are back in the main code section, and I believe it's defined there. But I'll find that for you and bring it forward. If not, we'll propose it.
Okay, great. Any more discussion? You went over your time limit.
I know. I'm sorry about that.
All right.
So I'm sorry, Jay. No, come on. If there's no more discussion, okay, great. Then we'll go on to Madeira Beach Barks and Brews.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, well, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, I will hopefully be quick. You all received a memorandum on this event, and I just kind of wanted to give you guys some background as well as answer any questions or smooth over hopefully any concerns you may have or not for this event. But ideally, this spurns off of the event that we had last year with the adoption of Clover at the firehouse, and plenty questions that we received either from last year's event and looking forward to this event. We found the opportunity to rebrand this event geared towards dogs and get folks out here, visit the park, visit the dog park, have vendors that are involved in the community with pet-friendly businesses, whether they allow their pets at their site or they service the pet owner community, you know, whether it's the animal hospital right here or the grooming place. There's plenty of places around town that we looked at to support this event. Just a quick rundown, the idea is to have a free community event at the ball fields right off the rec center, dog-friendly event intended to enhance the visibility of the park and the facilities. We would feature the pet-friendly business vendors, create some educational opportunities. We've actually talked to a few vendors that have expressed interest in stuff like this, not this specific one, but geared towards this, to have opportunities to talk about owning pets in Florida. You know, how do you treat them with the heat? What are the best places to get them exercise, stuff like that. bring out local food trucks and vendors, live music, and then do have a craft beer sampling portion of the event. The fundraising idea of this would be to help improve, help fund improvements to the existing dog park. I think you guys have seen that it does have some dead grass issues out there, and we replace that multiple times a year. And we've had requests for other things out there, and depending on the amount of money raised at the event, we would earmark that and kind of get a community response from the users of the dog park and see what they're looking for in those improvements. But the fundraising portion of this would be sponsors, vendor fees for the folks that participate. Last year there was a donation raffle, and half of those proceeds went to the funds for this event, and then the craft beer sampling portion of the event. Basically, that is kind of the summation of the event through the memorandum you guys received, and then there is the one flyer for sponsorships. We will send an additional flyer out similar to last year that goes to craft beer vendors and restaurants that may want to participate in this. As far as the craft beer portion, we don't spend any money to secure any of the beverages that are sampled. We had 20 breweries last year, and every ounce was donated to us. I think the addition of the dogs side of it, making this a pet-friendly event, I think this is could increase the attendance quite a bit and also bring more people out to the park to experience it. So I just wanted to see if you guys had any questions or any concerns.
I'm just kind of wondering where the event permit is.
For this, we haven't done anything as far as this. Internally, we follow the event permit process. I'll look through the code. If we need to fill out an event permit, we will.
The ordinance states any event.
There's an exclusion section at the very end of
There's some exclusion for the city in it, so.
Okay.
And if there is, I think we ought to get rid of that, because I think the city should be held to the same standards that the public is, in contacting fire and all the different elements that go into an event.
I completely agree with that. When we do host these events, again, there's only been a few
No, I understand.
root conversations to sponsors and people that might be involved. We haven't advertised the event yet. We wanted to make sure that you all saw it first. I didn't want you to look on the front of the newspaper and see that we were having an event that you may not agree with. So,
I think it's a good event.
yeah, well, okay. Well, I'm excited for that. But just internally, we do, I don't want to say that, well, I would say that we go the extra mile internally, because we are assuming, when we issue an event permit, the financial side, as far as what the event's going to make, the success of the event, we are very concerned with that, but our biggest thing is public safety and making sure that they run an event the way we would. But now that we have the financial side into it, I want to make sure that it's, 100%, 100% safe, 100%, everything's looked at. We run through that process.
Right.
I think we go the extra
It's basically a
step.
checklist.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I mentioned the public safety side of this thing. Last year, we accounted for a ton of extra parking, thinking this would be a larger event. We utilized the parking along Rex Place, the city parking, Winn-Dixie, and I believe we even asked the folks in Meteor Way for additional parking. And we may have had 10 or 20 cars in Winn-Dixie. The public transportation communication that we provided leading up to the event provided that we had more people dropped off to experience the event involving the craft beer portion than we had people drive up and park. So we do include a designated driver, free sodas and water for the event. Winn-Dixie donated free water for everybody that was sampling beer. So we're doing everything we can on a risk management process standpoint to make sure that this is not something that puts us in any jeopardy. But again, with the dogs and the vendors and the music and the food and all that stuff, I think the craft beer portion is secondary in the idea of the event, but it is our main fundraising opportunity. So, but I'll keep you guys, keep everybody on the board up to date on the planning of this event and sponsors and partners and everything else. So.
And all the money is going to be used to improve the dog park?
Yes, I spoke to Walt earlier today, and the idea is, obviously, in a perfect world, we can get enough sponsors to cover the cost before the event even starts.
What was the money used for last year?
Last year, it was for the pier. And so, again, dog-friendly, I think we're going to have a lot more participation and a lot more excitement on this, especially with Clover leading the way for us.
Jay, is this You said that this is the second year for the Barks and Brews?
Well, it's the first year
Was it the beer
rebranded.
festival last year?
Last year we
The
did
beer- Called the Beer Festival?
It was just called the Beer Fest.
I thought, yeah, I didn't remember the Barks and Brews. People love their doggies. They love
Yeah,
their doggies
and-
more
and
than
the-
anything
you-
else in the whole world.
More than some people say.
Yeah. Those of you who are on Facebook may know that there is a Friends of the Dog Park, Madeira Beach Friends of the Dog Park, similar to the Friends of the Library.
Yeah.
They have their own Facebook group, and they have discussions and photos and all that. So I plan on reaching out to them now that we've got some final details and seeing what we can do to help or have them help us and make it a mutual relationship as far as that goes.
Do you think that you'll be able to get partners or sponsorship before the event, or are you just hoping to recoup that in the back end?
Well, just off the top of my head, folks that have expressed interest, actually took my animals over to the beach groomers the other day. I guess stumbled into a lucky situation there. She was looking to advertise in the outfield fence, wants to be at the movie for the dog, and also wants to be at this event. So the interest is there. I believe we'll have a lot. You know, last year, our only sponsor was the Winn-Dixie, plus all the brewers that donated their beer. I think this year we'll have a lot more involvement and interaction with sponsors. People, he's right, people really do like dogs more than people sometimes. So.
Yeah, and if you did get the sponsors in advance, then they also bring their people in.
Yes, ma'am.
You get,
And that's the plan. You know, we have a Facebook page, not for this yet. It's the one from last year. I'm gonna rebrand all that stuff over the next few days here, and then the idea is just to announce folks as whether it's a brewery or if it's if someone says, hey, I'm gonna bring my dog, put my picture up. We might do that. We'll do a highlighted dog of the week or something leading up to the event. Just
have a doggy contest.
yeah, and that's the thing is, if this is a successful event, ideally I would like to make this a yearly thing, especially with the dog park. If we get to a point where we never need renovations to this dog park, we could start looking into potentially financing the pocket parks that we could call dog parks throughout the area. And
I just had one other question, though. Will the project on Rex Place that's got used, that we're suffering a little bit on the parking, I guess, or are we anymore? Will that affect, should we have this event in June, or should it wait until that project is ended, or?
what they've done for us, for all the events that we've had, is they close up the road. It's got to be passable for the residents anyway.
Right.
But with this parking lot here, we actually have the ability to park here or at Winn-Dixie and walk folks through the park. We just have to have a discussion.
So you're not dependent on Rex Place being for any other, okay.
And certainly with the local celebrity that we do have, and by no means did we utilize this photo on this publication as any way to influence the board. We would never do such a tactic. But, we are getting a lot of positive PR. I think even Women's Health Magazine wants to do a story on the dog, and we had to say, it's a dog, and they're like, yeah, it's just a great story. So we're getting a lot of positive PR, emails from all over the country, people stopping by almost every day to see the dog. So, I'm thinking about a revenue stream. Can we, have Clover do birthday parties and things like that? So nonetheless, this is going to be a great event. I think it'll be a start. A stakeholder for us, and we can make some improvements to our dog park. So
To give you guys an idea, kind of my dream, I don't know if any of you have been to the dog park in Tampa, along the water there. And the fire station actually just got the AstroTurf that they have there. They got a small portion in the back side of the fire station for the dog that it's antimicrobial, it needs irrigation just to rinse it off. It's a lot of municipal dog parks are moving this way because there's zero maintenance to it. That's my ultimate dream with this dog park. I don't know a number, and I don't want to scare anybody, so I'm not going to say anything, but it's an eventual dream. I don't know that this one event would get us there, but, if we kept moving forward with that, he did talk about a revenue stream. We could turn the dog park, we could do obedience classes and get-togethers and all sorts of stuff in the dog park with that to create classes for the residents and whoever else that want to be involved. So that's kind of where I'm going for that. I'm not just doing this to, hey, let's throw a party. Or, the idea is we'll, help offset some of these improvements that we want to make throughout the town. So, yep. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next, we have the city clerk's 6-month probationary period evaluation.
The began my service with the city on October 16th, so the probation ended on April 16th, so it's time to do the 6 months probationary. And I asked that each commissioner set up a time and talk to me about the evaluation, and I'll have it on the May 8th agenda for everybody to tell me their findings.
Okay. Very very good.
So we're supposed to do that and turn it in, right?
Yes, you'll turn it into HR,
Okay.
and there's a deadline in there.
It's by Monday, I
April
believe.
30th.
And then, yes. And I think the city manager, based on that, will you be doing the staff memo on that? or-
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the board, what I will do is once you submit your responses to the HR director, I will draft a staff memo that will tally what the scores are and the remarks, and then put it on the agenda for discussion for the board on that meeting.
Excellent.
City Clerk, should I be completing one of these two since I'm so brand new and I've only been with you?
Yeah, I certainly think, and you know,
Because
just
I
based
did-
on
Okay.
your experience, and then even setting, you know, what are some of the things going forward as far as goals and objectives. But yeah.
Some of them are really kind of unanswerable because I haven't asked for certain things or perhaps not participated, you know, in certain areas. Okay.
You know, you can always just put 5s there. That's what I recommend for people.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
We got the resolution to do.
I can just hit on that resolution really quick. We provided a resolution. We had some typographical errors. The city attorney has already addressed those typographical errors. The intent behind that resolution is to bring that before the board at the first meeting in May, basically asking for the state legislature to repeal the actions that they took concerning beach access and the adverse impact it will have to not just our beach community, other beach communities. And then we would like for the mayor at the Big C meeting tomorrow to say, here's a copy of the resolution that the city of Madeira Beach will consider at our next regular meeting. Here is some copies if you'd like to utilize it, make tweaks and modifications, but I think it's important for us, all our beach communities, to have a unified front and tell Tallahassee that we believe in the preservation of home rule, and our beaches are huge tourist destinations for us, as well as it helps, it's the quality of life and the access to the beach that folks moved here for, so we definitely need to protect and preserve that.
Okay. Mostly.
I've got a couple other things I'd like to bring up.
Okay.
I guess I don't understand why we're having the 15-minute meeting before our regular meeting, because not one thing that the BOC brought up at the last one is on this agenda today. You know, we didn't talk about any of these things, but the things we did bring up, I know Commissioner Hodges brought up things, I brought up things, I think Commissioner Oakley brought up things. Not one of the things that we asked to have on here is on there. And you know, why isn't it? That's my question.
Well, there's certain items that have been in the hopper for quite a bit of time, and so we're trying to get through a lot of those items. For instance, the fee ordinance, I think, has come back to the board maybe a total of about 8 to 10 times. Some of these items are time sensitive, i.e. the waste connection contract. The discussion, the board did talk about bringing the water taxi item back. We got the final report for the pavement management, so we wanted to share that with you sooner rather than later. But what we're also doing is taking all those items, and we're going to be publishing all the items that are going to be coming before the board for a workshop. As we get ready to go into the budget process, the fee ordinance is an important thing, and then also we wanted to provide you an update on the non-conforming as well as the sign ordinance, because the Planning and Zoning Board has already heard that, and that's an item that was going to come before you here at a future board meeting, so we wanted to make sure that you have an opportunity to see it before it comes to you. So we have a lot of items that are in the hopper that we're trying to work through and get them to the board, but we don't want to do it in the situation where there's any more than 4 to 6 items because we want to discuss them in greater detail. So we can publicize the list, and some of the items that the board has requested, we can communicate those in a staff report. We can communicate those in the city manager's report. There's a multitude of different ways to be able to get that. So that's what we've got a lot of things that are in the hopper that we're trying to address and try to move out and get completed, so.
You know, we've done special BOC meetings for different things. We could even do a special special workshop if we had to. But I think some of the things, you know, that were brought up, these are concerns of the different people here on the commission that I think, you know, I don't want to put it off for 2 more months or whatever. You know, I think that we need to start addressing these things that we bring up. You know, a good example is Commissioner Hodges brought up, you know, adding extra meetings or whatever, you know. So now we're putting that off for another month. You know, just.
The kiosk.
The kiosk.
That was completed.
I brought up about the traffic
kiosk.
study. You know, just different things that, you know, it's just kind of being pushed back, that I think we need to stop pushing it back and pushing it back.
And to that point, though, the traffic, the kiosk for John's Pass, that's actually going to be publicly noticed. And it's already, RFP's already done. I've already sent it to a couple of agencies, so that is complete as far as now waiting for that to come back. So there's a lot of items that we have effectively completed and addressed that are more operationally inclined. There's certain things that, you know, we've actually, you know, taken the time from staff to say, okay, looking at the FDOT issue, we've had conversations with FDOT. FDOT has communicated to us that they're not interested in addressing X, so now we're looking to explore another option. So there's a lot of internal workings that we're doing to get some of these items. Plus, there's other items that are pressing that have been put in the hopper. So we're trying to prioritize what items come before the board so you can effectively make the decisions on some items that are large public policy decisions. So we're moving through them as fast as we can. There's a lot of staff time and effort that goes into putting this stuff together. I would hope you would see the backup information is exponentially more in-depth than previous. We've done training, we've done a survey, we've done manager report. So we're putting out an exorbitant amount of work as an agency. So we're going to get to those things and we're going to get them to the board as fast as possible.
Well, there's no question that we've been doing an exemplary job in getting things done. But to John's point, I think maybe what we could do, if we're bringing things up at that 15-minute meeting that said, this is what we want to talk about, put it on the agenda. But on the agenda, if we don't think we have time, at least keep it on there and keep it going so we don't have to keep going back and looking. Say, or if something's happened that we're not aware of, like the kiosk. Say, well, this is on the agenda, but we don't need to talk about it because this has happened. And that way we'd all at least feel like our voices were being heard.
Oh, right, like actually showing it on the agenda and putting a little note by it, we'll discuss so-and-so on date. We've not got information complete.
Something like that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
we'll put together
Oh,
a calendar and attach it to future agenda items where items are placed.
Okay, I think that'd be great.
Thank you.
And I think we definitely really do need to have, I mean, we need to start, I think, on the budget process. Or I know that you're still waiting for information from department heads and stuff like that, but because the agenda was so, I don't like to use the word hastily, but last year it was not completed in as much depth as it should have been at all because of the time. You know, everybody had to get it done. But I think I think our budget really needs to go through. When I've looked at it just in the last couple of weeks, it needs fine-tuning.
And I think
I mean, it needs discussion, you know, and
fine-tuning.
fine-tuning.
From our budget review committee too. I think we need,
Yes.
you know, on that.
Right, but we could go ahead and begin that process.
Yep,
I mean, do you think that we need more? Don't you think that
We've got, and the city clerk may have provided you with, but we've got, you know, 9 pages of front and back items from, you know, all the committees, from the civil service to the bid to the, I'm meeting with all those committees and we're providing insight and perspectives and drafting reports for them as well. So there's a lot of things that we're doing. The budget process this year will be profoundly different than budget processes that we've gone through. And the finance director and I have already come to the conclusion that our budget document's probably going to be double the size of the budget document that the board has received in the past. So there's a lot of work and effort that's going to go into that. And we've outlined, and I did send to the board the budget direction as well as what the calendar is internally and the items that we're working on. So you'll be seeing the budget document here pretty quickly, and then we'll have a series of meetings to walk you through operation, capital, and then we're doing the same thing, the same conversations we're having with the board on the budget, we're having with the budget committee. We're also going to be having conversations with the or the Civil Service Advisory, the Civil Service Board on certain aspects. So there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be involved in the process.
Everybody gets to input, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All right, the last item on the agenda is the confirmation of direction. City Clerk?
You got anything?
I know on the first one, pavement management update, city manager's gonna put a pavement management program together that he's gonna incorporate into the capital improvement plan that'll eventually be coming back to the commission. On the water taxi agreement, the consensus was to bring back that 1-year extension.
That
Oh, I'm
was
sorry,
bring-
that was on the waste connections, I apologize. And on the water taxi one, the city manager is gonna meet with the operator, the owner of that, program and bring back some alternatives to the commission to decide on. And, Linda will eventually be bringing back an amendment to the non-conforming structure, the ordinance there. And the same way as the fee ordinance, and if we're gonna do the 50-cent increase part on the fees, that'll be incorporated into a resolution for the commission to decide on how to disperse those, that 50 cent, whether it's 25 or whatever portion. And same way with the sign ordinance, there'll be a modification coming back to the commission on that in an ordinance format. And for the Madeira Beach Barks and Brews, Jay Hatch, the Director of Recreation, he's gonna keep the commission informed on that event and everything. Then, once it gets put together and all, he'll do an event permit application for that. And then for the 6 months probationary period evaluation, each commissioner will be meeting with me on that right there, and that'll be on the May 8th agenda.
Okay.
Any additions? Any more final comments? No? Go ahead.
Budget for the ongoing year and whatnot, and I know you have.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Is it on? Okay. I know,
No, it's not
I
on.
think, try that one that's laying down, see what that does.
That'll work.
all right. Can you hear me now?
If you hold it
No,
up
pick
to
it
your,
up.
yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry about that. I hear everybody was talking about the budgets for the ongoing year, and you have a contract that's coming up for an extension and possible renewal for your recycling services. And they were talking about how the commodity levels is down, which that's true. But what happens when your commodity levels go back up? Is that helping out the city, or is that only helping out the hauler? So I'd like to speak on behalf of Waste Pro. We're a privately owned company, and we are the largest growing in the southeast region of the U.S. And we operate in 9 states, and our corporate is headquartered in Longwood, Florida. We operate in 61 out of 67 counties in the state of Florida with the most municipal contracts. We're privately owned, and we only answer to our customers. not the investors, not on Wall Street. There's a lot of different options in the future. You spoke quite a bit about knowing about contracts. And some of the things is that we get back. There's those options. When the commodity levels go back up, it's not about just paying for the service. Yeah, right now, that's benefiting you and everybody in the community, but what happens when it's at a high? There's those options out there. The residents wanting a cart, 65-gallon cart with a lid. Those options are out there. It shouldn't be based on if you have a 5-year agreement. You should be able to talk to your hauler. So please keep in mind for later on down the road that there is other haulers out there that would love to be able to manage your community. So to answer your questions also about the participation, I recently worked for that hauler for many years, and during the off-season, there was only about 30 to 40% that was in participation. Why? Because it was 18-gallon bids. It was blown all over the place. If it had lids, there would probably be more people participating. During the winter months, it was mainly about 65 to 75% participation. So if that helps out on any means. Thank you.
And your name was?
Justin?
Justin?
Yes. I'm the
Thank you.
division manager with Pinellas County with Waste Pro.
And thank you for sitting there for.
No. Hey, like I said, I listened to it about the budgets, and a lot of haulers won't speak about when the commodity levels go back up. There's a lot of things that could help out, like the city of Madeira Beach right now. It would help out because there is rebates back. We own our own recycle facilities, just like Waste Connections. It used to be Waste Services, IESI, then Progressive Waste. Now it's Waste Connections. I know because I was there. I managed this contract for many years. And so it's a great community. It's quiet. Unlike some other contracts, it's very loud. We currently service the city of Dunedin. One of the larger haulers, they were doing it before us. And the city's happy as all can be. We're out there every day. We're locally driven. That's what it's all about. So, thank you.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 5:51.